Today's episode is brought to you by elitefts.com. Founded in 1998 with the primary aim to live, learn, and pass on. Please help Elite FTS support this mission by smashing the like button, leaving a comment, sharing with a friend, and thinking of us for your training needs. If you can put it in a gym bag or load weights on it, Elite FTS has it.
What's going on? I'm Dave Tate. We are broadcasting from the middle of the Elite FTS weight room, where the underground still thrives and you're part of the crew. It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. We are back, and today's guest is Traci Ortmayer. Did I say that right?
You said it right, man.
Okay. Because sometimes I'll listen and I'll hear, YouTube, however the people pronounce it, but it doesn't always mean that it's right.
Yeah. Well, I get a lot of Ortmeyers and Ortmeyers and
Yes. So I should have asked you beforehand, but I forgot, but I nailed it, so it doesn't really matter, right? It doesn't work. So before we get going, I want to thank today's sponsor, Element. Element is a tasty electrolyte drink. It's a lot of the other electrolyte drinks, I don't want to, say their names, right? They either have too much sugar in it, which you don't want, where Element is just the sodium, the potassium, and the electrolytes that you need. And the most important thing with it is it doesn't taste like ass. There's two flavors I don't like really well. I don't like the chocolate. I'm a great spokesman, right? Like I don't like the chocolate. I don't like the jalapeno. But here's the thing: with any order that you place, they will send you a sample pack for free, so you can try all the different flavors. The watermelon I like the best. Personally, I have issues with cramping because I always train in gyms that are hot as hell. And the training sessions always last way longer than what do they say? You shouldn't train longer than an hour bullshit.
Yeah, something like that.
Always lasts longer than that. And when you're bigger and you sweat like a pig. So the cramping later in the day, I haven't had that issue since I've been using that. So head over to drinkelement.com. That's DRINKLMNT.com, and you will get the free sample pack with every order. If you don't like the stuff at all, if you just give it to a friend, let them know about it, they'll give you a 100% money back guarantee. So with that said, we're on to the show. I've been looking forward to having this podcast because you got a great story. You got an incredible story, a dark story. I mean, it's light, dark. There's all kinds of lessons to be learned from that. But you got a lot of history in the sport too, where there's a long duration.
Yeah, well, 20 years in strongman now.
2 decades in strongman. So before we get into that, how did you get started just training in general?
Oh man.
So your kids, I assume.
I was 11. I was 11. I'd always had a real interest in it, in just weightlifting, bodybuilding, whatever. First off, I wanted to be Conan the Barbarian. I loved the way that looked. I remember when I was 7, I had a next door neighbor who had a gym built in his garage.
So the first Conan movie, what's the most favorite part?
Oh, which is the most favorite part? Aside from him pushing the gigantic Conan's wheel, I mean, that has to be the favorite part. Just straight out. That
throwing
has
the
to be
head down the stairs, man.
But then, just the way. Well, it's the progression, watching him grow like that. But then, watching him hack off Tulsa Doom's head, throw it down the stairs. And then all his minions just kind of filing out single file, throwing out their torches and.
Yes. So I always wonder where people, because the Conan's wheel is usually one of the answers. Nobody wants to say throwing the head down the stairs until I say it. Then they're like, oh yeah.
I think my other favorite part was when he took on all the attackers in that kind of Stonehenge thing towards the end. That was probably one of my favorite parts. Mm-hmm. He asked his god Crom for help and glory and all that.
Yes. So you grow up as a kid wanting Crom as your god.
Pretty much.
And then you find Valhalla.
And then, Thor, any of those guys, you're larger than life, mightier than man should be.
Yeah.
And I always wanted that. I always thought that was awesome. I think being bullied in middle school, I moved from Southern California to South Georgia when I turned 11. I was the fat kid, in South Georgia. I mean, you talk about a culture shock. I was ostracized. I was treated very differently. I was, the black kids hated me because I was white. The white kids hated me because I was fat and from California. And I just kind of withdrew into getting stronger. And the rage from that bullying probably fueled the first 10 years of my career.
Who taught you? I mean, who showed you the lifting? I mean, somebody's got to introduce you to that path.
Well, like I said, when I was 7, I had a neighbor who had a gym, and I'd watch him work out. So I had an idea of what to do. And then I remember the very first actual lesson that I had. I was doing bench press one day, and then I tried to do bench press the next day, and I couldn't do as much weight, and I was all pissed off. And my dad just kind of looked at me. He's like, well, you got to give it a day. You got to let yourself heal. And that light bulb went on. I was like, oh, I never thought about that side of it. I thought you just lift and you get stronger each time you lift. So that was my first real lesson with weight training. And then
how long did it take? Because I have a similar story, right? So I get my ass kicked all the time because of learning disabilities and all this other stuff. And I find training, right? And it was a release at first because it isolated me. I didn't have the same thoughts. I could take the rage out, all the other stuff. But it took a little while until I realized this is actually making it so they're not bullying me anymore. So I went from the kid that used to get his ass kicked all the time to the kid nobody wanted to fuck with. So the kid everybody fucked with to the kid nobody wants to fuck with. How long did it take until you saw that change?
Oh, man, because I was always younger than everyone in my grade. I was always kind of developmentally a late bloomer.
Yeah.
I don't think I really started seeing the fruits of my labor till halfway through high school, maybe my junior year, when I finally started to get a step up on everybody else. And by that point, I'd been lifting for 5 years already, 6 years.
How did it feel, though?
I don't think I realized it at the time. I don't think, looking back, I know that people stopped picking on me. It never occurred to me that, I was making a difference in that. I thought they just moved on to other people.
Yeah.
So, it wasn't until maybe my senior year that I realized that people had started to fear me a little bit. I remember some guy tried to pick on my best friend. Tried to fight him. So I met him at the park after school as he was trying to, get in the car and go home. And he refused to fight me. His girlfriend was standing in between us. She wouldn't let him come out. And he got in the car and buckled his seatbelt and drove off.
It's a little different feeling though, isn't it?
It was kind of shocked. I remember standing there going, what the fuck just happened? It was weird. I never wanted to fight when I was younger, and then when I wanted to fight, no one wanted to fight me.
Yeah, exactly. But as you said, that rage, aggression, whatever it is, fuels the training.
Yeah, 100%.
Builds, and then at what point did you find competitive strongman or power? Which was first, the powerlifting or the strongman?
Actually, bodybuilding was first.
Bodybuilding was first.
Yeah, okay. I didn't really know anything about powerlifting. I knew there was strongman because I saw it on TV, but
the magazines are all bodybuilding too.
And then that's exactly it. Yeah. I would go down to Kroger and I'd steal a Flex magazine or a Muscle Mag or something like that.
Yeah.
And then in high school, I actually did 2 bodybuilding shows. Excuse me. One my junior year and one my senior year. And I remember my junior year, I knew I was unprepared. My senior year, I knew I was prepared. And I still didn't place. The problem was it was a fundraiser for the football team, and I wasn't on the football team. And I realized then the subjective nature of bodybuilding and how I didn't place because I wasn't part of the football team. And so I kind of was a little dejected by bodybuilding. And then, as I still trained for it for a while. I really put a lot into it. I built my whole life around my training schedule. And I remember gradually starting to think, this really isn't that fun anymore. And I don't want to get up on stage and pose. It's just not my deal. It's good for some people, not for me. And so I was about 20 when I was doing really well in college. I never did well at all in high school. I never opened a book when I got home. So college, I started to learn how to study and prepare for exams. And I had a couple academic awards and honors credit. And I was thinking biotechnology was the way to go. I was going to go full speed ahead with that. And I was working full time as a waiter. So I started to think maybe instead of building my entire life around my workout schedule, I can just put that on the back burner and really focus on school and make some money, save some money. Because at that point, I'd also tried a powerlifting meet and bombed out. And so that wasn't very fun. So it was almost like my path was about to take a sharp turn towards the academic side of things and towards a probably a more respectable, calmer, American, red-blooded, nice home life and all that kind of path.
Keyword perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. I was on that path, and then it's like God just kind of threw strongman in my way. And
how so?
Well, there's a guy named Marshall White. He made it to World's Strongest Man in 2009. We were training together, and this is after I had graduated high school. I'd moved from the Atlanta area to Texas, and that's when I started training powerlifting with him. He and I had done the powerlifting meet. That didn't go very well for me. We were still training together, and I remember he told me, hey, I'm going to do Texas Strongest Man. And I remember looking at him like, what? You mean like those guys on TV? What are you, crazy? We'll never be that strong. And nevertheless, he signed up to do it. And being his training partner, I was going to go up and help him. So Texas Strongest Man, we lived in Houston. Texas Strongest Man was in a little town called Denison, Texas, which was right at the Oklahoma border. It's like a 6-hour drive straight north. Hot as hell there. We're driving up, and I remember Marshall is funny because the whole way he's saying, I just don't want to finish last, man. I just don't want to finish last. I'm like, you got to get that shit out of your head. Nevertheless, we get there. He's signing in. The promoter looks at me and says, hey, man, you're here. Why don't you sign up? I say, you know what? What the hell? I'll give it a shot. And that's when Marshall looks up and says, man, I'm glad you signed up because at least now I know I won't take last. It's like, all right. I didn't know I had a competitive bone in my body until that moment. And I thought that with everything in me, I'm going to destroy this guy tomorrow. I didn't realize that I was going to have the absolute most fun of my entire life doing anything that I had ever done. This changed me. Strongman was, let's put it this way. I dreamt about those events every night for the next 6 months. I woke up feeling the farmer's handles in my hands. I could wake up and I'd smell the tacky, or I'd feel the Atlas stones in my arms. It hit me so freaking hard. And I knew right then that God had thrown this in my way. And it was like school and academics went this way and strongman went sharp right turn the opposite direction.
What can you pinpoint like what it was that because there's a small right. I know that the time in strongman, like you're probably in a hotel parking lot somewhere, and there's not a whole lot of
bank
people.
Parking lot.
Yeah. So a bank parking lot. There's not. So it's not the crowd. You know what I'm saying? It's yelling and screaming. It wasn't that. How many competitors were there?
8.
So that wasn't the competition, right? What was it? The exertion. It
was finally finding something that. Because I had been training for 9 years at this point.
Yeah. From
the time I was 11 to the time, this was a week before my 21st birthday. It was like all the training that I had done, my whole life being, revolving around my workout schedule. It's like that all suddenly made sense and had a purpose. All those pieces that I was just blindly going through by faith.
And you didn't win, right? So you were what?
No,
so you didn't. So it wasn't winning either.
No, it took 5th place.
It was just you felt like it all mattered.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Everything that I had been doing was for this reason.
Yeah.
And suddenly I had a purpose, and my purpose was to be as good, as strong, and to win World's Strongest Man, to be the absolute best athlete that I could be. And A little side note, Marshall did take last.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just school and work. I quit my job shortly after. I was still in school for a little while, but my grades started to slip a little bit because I was obsessed with strongman. And with biotechnology, I actually had to be in the classroom. And by that point, I was traveling and competing. So, I thought, well, I'll just put school on hold for a year and I'll come back after I give this strongman thing a real shot. And that was 20 years ago.
So that one competition put you all in.
100%.
100% all in.
Yeah, I was obsessed.
Yes.
I had, like I said, I had so much fun doing that. I didn't know that you could feel that way.
Yeah.
It was purpose. It was real, true blue purpose in life. And it just made everything that I was doing make sense.
So then all revenue that you earned would be bouncing and crowd, just whatever you needed to be able to pay bills. That was it.
Yeah. Luckily, I was only 20. I lived with my friend Marshall, and we had a pretty cheap rent, $300 a month or something.
Yeah.
But everything that I did from that moment on was to go to World's Strongest Man, to win World's Strongest Man, to compete anywhere, anytime. And honestly, I think I went a little too far with it because I competed really hard. I competed probably harder than any other American has ever done.
So from that first competition until you got hurt, right? So how many competitions were there?
Oh, shoot. Well, so it took me, that was 2002. I did a few shows in 2003 as an amateur. Got my ass handed to me at nationals. Came back with a vengeance in 2004 and won every event in nationals. Got my pro card. And then went to Worlds in 2005, but World's Strongest Man and IFSA had split in 2005. So I was with IFSA, not with World's Strongest Man. IFSA had all the top athletes. World's Strongest Man had Mariusz Pudzianowski, but all the other top guys went the other way. So I wanted the stiffer competition. And I took 10th at my first 2 world championships, as a rookie and then as a second-year rookie. Went to the world championships in 2007. And then by that point, IFSA and World's Strongest Man had kind of dissolved their difference, and we all competed at World's Strongest Man again in 2008. So I had 3 world championships before going to World's Strongest Man. And then 8, 9, 10, and 11, I competed through, I had injuries here and there, but I was averaging around 18 competitions a year during that time.
Now, how do you qualify for, what's an invitation for the World's Strongest Man, right? Or how do you qualify for the World's Strongest Man?
So you've got a couple different routes.
Yeah.
At that time, there was no direct qualification in the early 2000s. It was invite only. Then one of the judges that helps organize World's Strongest Man, he started a league called Giants Live. Giants Live has direct qualification. But that doesn't usually fill all the spots for World's Strongest Man, so they still reach out to Strongman Champions League or whoever else for the extra athletes to fill the spots. And that's, I think that's how I got invited the first year, 2008. I take that back. I did qualify directly in 2008. But yeah, qualified, competed my ass off, was injured several times, but really just loving every minute of it. I was traveling around the world doing, basically getting paid to work out in other countries.
Yes. Yeah.
So I ate it up, and I burned the candle at both ends. I trained my ass off. I competed my ass off. I was traveling, never really took a break. Well, like for instance, 2008, I tore my pec the day after I'd gotten my ticket to compete in Holland. And I wasn't going to tell the promoter, hey, I can't come. You just wasted $1,200. So I went and competed, and I still took second. And then 3 weeks later, I did a contest called Madison Square Garden Super Series, and I won that show. I think that was the one that got me the invite to World's Strongest Man that year. The following week was Fortissimus, and Fortissimus was notoriously, it was one of the hardest competitions of all time.
Why?
So just because the number of events, the weight of the events, the difficulty, the overall.
Was it a long, like, say the Arnold's got a short stage, so it's heavier, more anaerobic, I guess, where some of the other ones are longer in duration. So was this one more stamina? It's not really stamina. You get what I'm saying?
It was a combination of probably moderate distances.
Okay.
But really heavy weights.
Okay.
And they had 12 events in the first year, 2008. So 12 events, 6 events, 2 days in a row. That's 2 really long competitions back to back. Most contests are 5 events. So when you throw in 12, you're more than doubling what you're supposed to do. And then the weights that they put on top of it, it was brutal. But, I did that with a torn pec and then rehabbed it a little bit. I'm still missing half of it. But rehabbed it enough to go to World's Strongest Man and take 5th in the final that year. And I did that, I think, pretty much most of my career was rehabbing some kind of injury that I just wasn't talking about and fighting anyway. Not smart. And if I had a coach I wish that I had a coach kind of like me, someone to watch my ass and to tell me when to sit down.
Yeah.
Which maybe that's what makes me a good coach now, is because I've done everything the wrong way and managed to come back and.
Well, I can push back a little bit and say if it's the bigger ones, the bigger shows, you're still doing it. Yeah. But the smaller ones, you don't necessarily have to push through that shit or even do them in the first place.
Exactly. It's exactly it. But yeah, man, I mean, just doing that and competing through those injuries was really burning the candle at both ends. And the way I say it is burning the candle at both ends and blowtorch in the middle. Just because of the life that I was living outside of it, the amount of traveling, the amount of partying after shows that we would do, in certain leagues. It just started to take its toll, I think, after a while.
And that gets you to 2011, right?
2010.
Or was it 2010? Where you broke your ankle?
Where I broke my ankle. Yeah. Halfway through the final 2010. I was in first place at the time. And I had all of my good events the next day. So I was a little bummed, to say the least. Broke my ankle. Sucked it up, competed the next day, still held on for 5th place. But that injury kind of plagued me for a year. I remember I was trying to get ready for the Arnold, which was like 6 months later. And I was still wearing a brace and still limping a lot of the time. And I still competed at the Arnold. I ended up taking 4th that year. And I remember we had a 950-pound frame carry up an incline. It was miserable. My foot hurt all the time, in addition to other parts of my body. But yeah, I mean, it started to take a toll mentally.
What was different with outside of it just being bone, right? Because I assume all the other injuries were soft tissue injuries, pulled pec, just wear and tear type of shit. With that being the bone, was that the biggest difference between the ankle and the other ones, or was it because you couldn't work around it because you have to walk on it all the time?
I think a little bit of both, because what it was I think it's called an avulsion fracture, where the tendon came off the side of the foot and it took a chunk of bone with it. And yeah, it was because I couldn't work around it. It's because it just hurt all the freaking time. And if you think about the chain of the body, everything starts at the ground and works its way up. So anything that I'm doing is being affected by that.
Did you have it fixed at some point?
No, there was not really anything to fix. Okay. I mean, I guess maybe they could have stapled the bone back on, but I got a little gap on the side of my leg from the peroneus muscle kind of being shortened. But that led to a lot of bad decisions. I think the fact that I kept competing, the fact that I kept pushing, the fact that I kept training on it, really enabled me to, I guess, justify taking the amount of painkillers that I was taking, and that's the kind of thing.
Well, how did it start? Right. So, because I assume you're having, Advil, that kind of shit, right? For before all this stuff. And then at some point, somebody's writing you a prescription for Vicodin and Oxy or whatever it's going to be.
Yeah.
So when that started, it didn't start, you weren't abusing it, right? So it was, here's the script for 3 a day or whatever it's going to be.
Yeah.
Did that flip really fast, or did you follow protocol for a while and then it flipped?
Well, it started, like you say, with a doctor saying, hey, you could really use this. I think it'll help. Yeah. And, first and foremost, I want to make it known that I don't blame him. No, I get that. I understand the competitive mindset, right? It's going to help. I mean, I've kind of been down the same road, but not to the same extreme. It's like, okay, look, it dulls it. If it just dulls it a little bit, then I can train as hard as I want to fucking train. That's kind of where it was.
And it did that. It just that little, all you need is that little bit, right? But that little bit turns into a lot.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, you build up a tolerance really quickly.
Yes, that's what I'm getting at, is how long did it take for that tolerance to shift for you?
It didn't take long at all. I knew I had this little voice pop up in the back of my head when I was going the first day to meet with this guy. I knew it was a bad idea, but I thought, no, I can follow protocol, like you say. Yeah. I'll be all right. And I think that only worked for maybe a couple weeks. And then I started to go a little bit faster, because I noticed that the effects were dwindling. Yeah. So I would pop 2 instead of 1. Yeah. And 2 became 3 pretty quickly.
How long ago was this? So what year was this?
So that actually started in 2009.
All right, so that's before the laws changed too. So they could liberally write as many as you wanted.
Yeah, it was. I mean, there was some hoops they had to jump through, but it was pretty easy to get around. Yeah. I was getting, at one point, some, there was like 15 milligram, 100 compounding pharmacy, like 180 capsules a month. So, minimum 3 a day, but I would burn through that, and then I'd have another script from another doctor. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, but that started in 2009, and by the time 2010 came, I was at World's Strongest Man, and I was taking a fair amount during the qualifiers and everything before I broke my ankle.
At what point did it change your mind, your mindset, right? Because it's 2 things happened with, pain meds, right? It's going to dull the pain, but it's going to dull your brain too. Yep,
absolutely.
But it takes a higher dose for a lot of people before that happens. Were you even aware that was happening?
Not at the time. No, that's one of the things that I try to make people understand now, is that painkillers don't just dull the pain in your body. They numb everything. Mm-hmm. They numb your emotions. They numb your pain. They numb everything. And I was married at the time. I had a wife that had moved from England over to be with me. And I just kind of gradually started drifting apart, I think, over the years. We had a son in 2009. And then in that relationship just got a little bit more distant every year. All the way through 2010, 2011, 12. 2012, I think, was when I was taking, I was taking 8 pills at a time, with 8 hydrocodone, 10 milligram hydrocodone, along with 5 Soma. Soma, kind of a muscle relaxer that increases the effectiveness of it. Mm-hmm. I'd take 8 of those and 5 Soma a few times a day. Mm-hmm. You talk about numbing everything.
And now you're not, at this point, you got to have either several prescriptions or you got to be getting it through illegal sources, right?
Yeah, I was doc shopping. I went to 2 or 3 doctors a month.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know it's not right, but you also know that without it, you feel like absolute shit. So,
yes.
I mean, you kind of start doing whatever you can do.
Mm-hmm.
But going back to 2010, when I was taking them through the qualifiers, this was in South Africa, so I had brought as many as I could with me. By the time I broke my ankle, I was almost out. So I had to like be very, very careful how many I used after I had broken my ankle. So here I've got this pain management like in my bag readily available, and I can't freaking use it because I'm almost out of what I've got.
Mm-hmm. Oh shit.
Yeah. So that sucked. I mean, that was miserable. That whole second day of competition and then the flight home was awful. But going forward a couple of years, you know, at the combination of taking the painkillers, which was making me the kind of person that I was, just kind of numb. In addition to my foot hurting so bad all through 2011 and trying to prepare for competitions and you know, my wife kind of pushing me to compete because that's how I made money. So, you know, here I felt like I was being forced to compete when I felt like absolute shit, and I did it anyway. So I started to hate training at that point. So here I was, you know, passionate about training. Like this was my life. I loved lifting weights since I was 11 years old. It was the only thing I ever wanted to do. And I'm at a point now where I can't stand walking in the gym. You know, my body hurts. I'm sick of it. I resent training. I resent having to go to compete. And I kind of lost myself. I remember at one point, 2011 or 2012, kind of looking in the mirror and then wondering who that was staring back at me. You know, and then I saw something years later, this kind of summed it up. You know, when a professional athlete retires, it's an overwhelming kind of reality shift for that person, where you have this person who's solely focused on one thing for so long, and you know exactly what you want every single day of your life, and then take that big chunk of their life and pull it out of the equation, and now you're left with this huge gaping hole. Now, if you got this giant hole, it's vacuum, and the first thing that's going to get sucked in is everything negative in life. Yeah. So, you know, alcoholism, drug use.
Well, you lose your identity, you lose your purpose.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
You know,
and
so
that's where I was with it.
So how did you keep training even though? You see what I'm saying? Because you kept...
At that point, it was more habit.
Yeah.
You know, 2011, 2012, I just did it because it's what I do.
Yeah. And then what's going on with the rest of your life at that time?
The rest of my life at that time was kind of falling apart. You know, my relationship with my wife was falling apart. We'd grown distant, like I said. And then by the end of 2012, or by midway through 2012, I pretty much quit training. I couldn't stand it anymore. I didn't go to the gym. And at that point, you know, that's a lot of free time during the day. So I would fill that time with either more pills or alcohol or whatever. And of course, my wife didn't like that. So we split apart even more. She actually moved out. She moved in with a friend just down the street. And things had gotten bad enough at that point that we knew that we needed to get out of Houston. We knew we needed to get some new, like a change of scenery, basically. At least this is kind of what I was understanding, was she was going to move over to England, back where she was from. She was going to get things set up for us there. I was going to sell the house in Houston and then move over. Mm-hmm. So once she got to England with my son, she kind of flipped the script on me and told me that I wasn't welcome. And
after she got there, so you're in the airport and she's leaving. Do you know she's gone?
So I mean, I took them to the airport, and this is actually kind of leading to the worst day of my life. So I'll back up a little bit. We decided she was going to move over, get things set up. Yeah. I was going to sell the house and then move over after she had gotten things set up. In the back of my mind, I knew that wasn't what was going to happen. I knew this was a bad idea, but I was desperate. I wanted things to work out. Yeah. I wanted to fix things. I wanted to have a chance to repair the family. So I remember taking them to the airport on November 25th, 2012, the absolute worst day of my life. My son is 3 years and 3 weeks old. And I remember dropping them off at the airport, and he's got his little Cars backpack and his baseball hat on, and he's excited as hell because he's going on an adventure, basically. And I said goodbye to him. I said goodbye to my wife, and I watched them walk through the doors, and every alarm bell in the back of my head was screaming at me that this was a terrible idea. You know, and I just ignored it, and I said, "It's for the best. It's what we've got to do." And my intuition was screaming. Man, it was overwhelming. As soon as I watched him walk through the doors, it's like I felt my heart shatter. It was the single most painful moment in my entire life. And I've been through a lot of painful experiences, but nothing came close to that. I actually had to pull over and take a minute on the way home just to kind of gather myself. But I heard so much at that point that this is where things get really bad. Well,
as you're gathering yourself, what are you thinking at that time? So you pull over, right? And this is a fucking disaster.
Yeah.
You know, is there any voice just trying to say, look, it's going to be all right? Or is it just all this?
It's all panic. It's all panic, and this is a terrible idea. And so the decision that I made, this is where things got really bad. The decision I made was, you're hurting so bad right now. Take a week and just get as fucked up as you want. Do whatever you want. And then after that week, we're going to get our shit together and we're going to start moving forward with things. Mm-hmm. That week turned into 4 years of meth addiction. And, it was probably one of the worst decisions I'd made. I decided.
Had you used meth before this?
Yeah, I only a couple times. Mm-hmm. You know, like I just at a party or something. I was around it. I had an ex-girlfriend who had started getting into it, and she's the one I actually contacted. Because I'm like, I just got to get fucked up. I'm going to find something. So I asked if she had anything, and that's what she happened to have. Yeah. And so I spent the next 4 years down that rabbit hole. At first, I was just trying to get out of the pain that I was in. But a few days into it, I realized that when I was on meth, I didn't need to take any painkillers. And this might have been why it ended up catching me so bad. Because I thought to myself, well, shit, I've done everything I can to get off these painkillers. I had tried to quit several times, and it was fucking awful. I mean, miserable. Mm-hmm. So I thought to myself, well, I can use this. I can use the meth to get off of the painkillers, and I'll just quit that. I don't need that. This is no problem. And that was.
Yeah, how'd that work out?
Yeah, not so good.
So what those 4 years look like?
A descent into madness is what it looked like. It was, I was on a downward spiral, just a slow descent. Because I was kind of keeping things together with the painkillers. I was able to work, and I had a personal training job that I did.
So you were able to hide most of this.
Yeah, or at least function a great deal. Yeah. Once I got into the meth, it spiraled quickly. Yeah. It was throwing napalm on a fire.
So are we speaking, crack houses and shit like that, or are you still able to hide it and train people? And
I managed to hide it a little bit for a few months.
Yeah.
And then just little by little, I was losing little pieces of that life. And I don't know, within, say, 6 months, I wasn't able to train people anymore. I was basically out of a job. I was not training, couldn't stand training. couldn't stand competing. Wasn't training other people. Basically what I started doing was driving around on trash night, and I would find things that people were throwing away. I would refurbish them and then resell them. That I don't know exactly what point during all of this that happened, but I actually kind of built. I was always industrious.
Yeah. Well, you still have to pay bills, I assume, right?
Yeah. Well,
So are you homeless at this point?
I was close. I wasn't paying my mortgage, and I was losing my house at that point. I was paying some bills, like my phone bill and food and stuff like that. I wasn't making enough money to pay mortgage.
Obviously, you're not training.
And then, I wasn't training
Yes.
anybody. So let's say a year and a half into it, I finally got to a point where they were going to foreclose on me with my house, and I filed for bankruptcy. Now, this is just to give you an idea how bad things were in my life and how painful that November 25th moment was. The day that I filed bankruptcy, which is a shitty experience, I got home and I was served with divorce papers. So all in the same fucking day. And I just kind of laughed about it because at that point, there was so many bad things happening to me all the fucking time that at this point.
2 years in, 3 years in?
This would have been probably end of 2013, year and a half in.
Okay.
Year in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, she's over in England, has told me I'm not welcome, has filed for divorce, and I've now filed for bankruptcy so I could stay in the house a little longer. Things were just falling apart at the seams every which way. And I managed to hold on to the house. I filed for bankruptcy 3 different times and then never actually followed through on the bankruptcy. It was just enough to halt proceedings on the foreclosure for 6 or 8 months each time. So
Interesting, because you're blasted out of your mind most of the time, but you're figuring out how to do
that's
this.
That's what I mean. I was industrious, man. I figured it, but everything that I did was reactionary. There was nothing proactive in that. So, and that's what I mean by descent into madness. You're just surrounded by people of a similar mindset. And, when you're surrounded by tweakers, man, God damn, life sucks. I'm not going to lie. I hate tweakers. I can't stand them. That whole lifestyle just fucking sucks. Everything about it sucks. And I remember being miserable every single day. And I remember being miserable some reason, before that, like with my ex-wife, I remember feeling miserable. I don't know if it's because of our relationship being strained, but at some point I became aware of this, of how miserable I was and how I was constantly looking at the world through this negative lens, and I realized at some point, very vaguely at first, that it seemed that the more I was looking at things negatively, the more negativity I found or I created for myself. It was almost like it self-perpetuating kind of thing.
Was there any point during this time where you just didn't want to be here?
Well, that's actually what I was getting to. Yeah, because it was sometime, I believe, summer of 2015. Now my house has fallen into my house had kind of gotten trashed because what I was doing with refurbishing shit. I had crap everywhere, and I had the grass outside, it looked like a tweaker house. Let's just put it that way.
Well, was it? I mean, were there?
Yeah, I mean, okay. I didn't have a whole bunch of tweakers, but I had a roommate that moved in, and they were tweakers, and it went from bad to worse. Just being surrounded by people and that.
Was there anybody during this time like trying to smack you upside the head and say, "Dude, what the fuck are you doing?"
So early on, right when my wife had left, I had a few people, I know they meant well, but they would say things like, "Oh man, I know how you feel. You just got to get up, you got to keep going." And I remember all I was thinking at that point was like, fuck you. You don't know how I feel. You know, of course, yeah, okay. I had a friend whose girlfriend had wouldn't let him see his son or moved 2 hours away. And it was not convenient for him to see his son. And he was telling me he knows how I feel. And I'm just thinking, you bullshit, man. 2 hours is not fucking plane right away. You know, it's a different story. I don't get to go see my son whenever I want to. So that was the way I was looking at things was anger. I was just mad. I was mad at the world. But during, you know, all of this descent into madness, at the beginning, people were trying to talk to me, trying to work with me, but it didn't take long for everybody to kind of turn their back on me. You know, the more miserable I got, the more it seemed everybody bailed on me as well.
Everybody?
Everybody. Yeah. My friends started turning their backs on me. I lost everything. My friends started turning their backs on me. My wife had taken my son. My family was turning their backs on me. And I don't think, you know, my family was like trying to, I don't know, consciously turn their backs on me, or they were just trying to distance themselves from me and leave me alone in my misery. But whatever it was, you kind of feel abandoned in the moment. So that just fueled that anger and animosity. And, you know, because I remember having this little checklist of things that I was so unhappy about, that I was miserable about. And it would kind of go through my head every now and then. It's like I've lost my wife, I lost my son, I lost my family, I lost my friends, I lost my job, I lost my passion. Now I'm losing my house, you know, and I'm losing my fucking health and my sanity, and really literally lost everything. You know, I was hanging on to that house by a thread. And during the summer of, going back to what I was saying a second ago, the summer of 2000, I think it was 15, I got to a point where I didn't want to do it anymore. You know, I was finished. I remember the breaking point was trying to call my son. And this whole time I kept up with him. I talked to him several times a week. But I could feel my ex-wife distancing me and not answering the phone as much. So it would have been, you know, 5 times a week. Then it was 3 times a week. Then it was twice a week. Then it was once a week. And at this point, it'd been like 2 weeks that I had called and I'd gotten no answer. So every time I got that voicemail, it was like a little knife to the heart kind of feeling. And that one particular day, it got me, and I wanted to be done. And I had this 40 caliber Beretta with these hollow point nasty bullets. And I remember being done. I just put it in my mouth and I thought, I don't want to fucking do this anymore. I can't. I hurt too bad. I'm tired of hurting. And for some reason, the thought of the guy, the poor bastard who would have to clean my brains up off the ceiling, just flashed through my mind. And I thought, you know, I don't want to do this to that guy. And then the second thought after that was, why the hell are you even thinking about this? Why would you even care if you're not here? And that led to the thought of, okay, maybe I'm not quite ready to do this. So I kind of backed myself off the ledge a little bit. And I remember putting the gun down, shaking, and kind of letting the realization of what the hell just happened sink in, about how I literally came within, you know, a millimeter of ending everything. And I kind of broke down a little bit right there. And I thought, I can't keep living like this. I can't keep living this way with this constant negativity, this oppressive fucking sadness around me all the time. And I remember thinking, how did I get here? What brought me here? And I thought about all the negativity, and I noticed how I keep thinking about all the negativity. And I started to catch the idea of, okay, well, maybe if I keep thinking about all this negative shit and it keeps putting me further down this negative spiral, maybe I should try to find something positive to think about. Maybe I could switch this, reverse this momentum. And I thought, okay. look around. Let's find one thing positive, one thing to be grateful for. And I remember looking around and I see that trashed tweaker house. I was in my bathroom. I was sitting on the side of my bathtub, and the faceplate off the side of my bathtub was gone because I had sold it. So, I mean, we're talking tweaker.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You're selling everything.
And I started looking around going, shit. And I caught myself doing that negative checklist. It's like, okay, what do I have? Well, I've lost this, I lost this, I lost that, I lost that. And I went, wait a second. No, stop right there. I caught myself in the act of doing that negative checklist. And I said, let's find one goddamn thing to be positive for. And so I look around, and then I think I'm about to give up. And I put my head in my hands, and I'm looking down at my feet, and then I see my toes wiggle a little bit. And I thought, well, shit, at least I've still got my own 2 feet. And I thought, well, with these 2 feet, you know what? I don't need to stay here in this fucking hellhole anymore. I can get up and I can walk out of here if I want to. And I remember getting this feeling like from the pit of my stomach, and it just kind of shot up into the base of my throat. And it felt so freaking good. It was hope. It was joy. It was the first time I felt genuinely happy in years. And it was almost overwhelming. And I thought, goddamn, that's the feeling that I want. So I sat with that for a while. And then I went to bed. I got up the next day and I said, I want that feeling again. So I thought, let's find something else to be grateful for. And right away, I look around, I go, oh, fuck, I've lost this, I've lost that. And right into that negative checklist. So I caught myself. I shut that off. I said, you have your feet. Now let's find something else. And I said, let's keep it simple. All right, you got your feet, you got your hands. And I look at my hands, and I'm like, well, there we go. Okay, I got my feet, and I got my hands. My hands are still strong. With these feet and with these hands, I can get up and I can go anywhere. And again, I got that feeling up from the pit of my stomach up to the base of my throat. And I said, that's it. That was joy. That's what I want. So every day I tried to find something new. The third day I found a third thing. The fourth day I found a fourth thing. On the fifth day, I didn't find a new thing, but this is probably the most important part of this whole story. I didn't find a new thing, so I went through my previous 4 things. And now I've got a gratitude list. Now I have a list of things to be thankful for. Rather than a list of negativity that's causing me to spiral downward, I've got a list of positivity that's causing me to move upward. And that gave me that same feeling. And I thought, that's where the power is right there. So every day I tried to find something new. And I developed a little technique where I kept a rock in my pocket, or just some tiny little reminder, so that every time I reached in my pocket and I felt it there, I would go through my gratitude list. As many times a day as I felt it, I would stop whatever I was doing, I would go through my gratitude list. And I made it a habit to start seeing more things to be grateful for. So now I'm looking at the same world, and instead of having this negative lens, so that everything that I see is shit and making me unhappy, making me sad, and I see nothing but the bad, I'm looking at the same exact world, but I see everything that's good and everything that's right and everything that I can be grateful for. It was life-changing. Now, it took me a while to reverse all of that negative momentum that I had built up.
Well, what I was going to say is how are you doing that and still dealing with withdrawals?
Oh, at that point, I was still using.
Okay.
Hard, yeah. I mean, I was off. I did get off of the painkillers.
Yeah, well, obvious.
But I was full bore on the meth.
Yes.
But I had built this tool now to change the way that I looked at the world. Mm-hmm. And that I think with that strength, it took a few months of, and I'll actually tell you how I got off the meth in a sec. It took a few months to, a year really, to reverse that momentum in such a way that I had true positive forward momentum rather than just a slowing of the negative momentum, if that makes sense.
Yes.
But here's what I did to get off the meth. During this whole thing, I was in a self-destructive mode, obviously.
Yeah. You think?
I had started smoking cigarettes at some point, and I thought, the cigarettes thing it's such a waste of money. I don't have any money as it is right now. Let's cut this habit. So the way that I quit smoking cigarettes is I took a little page out of, have you ever seen that movie, A Clockwork Orange? At the end when they hold his eyes open, they force these violent visuals at him, and then they shoot him with some kind of drug that makes him feel sick.
Yeah.
I kind of did that. I made myself feel sick every time I saw the cigarettes, every time I lit one up, every time I breathed it in. I would imagine it choking me. So it got to the point after about a month where every time I'd take the pack out and I'd already start feeling sick. Like I had conditioned myself to start hating those. And then by that point, I couldn't smoke anymore. I couldn't stand it. And it almost worked a little too well because I can't stand anyone smoking around me. But I'd rather have that than still be smoking. And I thought, maybe I can apply that to the meth usage. Maybe I can see if this works. And luckily by that point, I hadn't been shooting the meth as much. I had stopped shooting up. I think my veins were tired at that point. So I was smoking it on a regular basis. I just basically employed the same tactic where every time I saw it, every time I inhaled it, every time I felt it, I felt sick. I made myself hate it. I said, I don't want this. I don't want this. And I was diligent about it. And that took, I don't know, about 6 months.
What about the roommates?
Well, at that point, luckily they had moved out.
Okay.
The last 6 months I was in my house, I was there alone.
All right.
I'd gotten rid of them, fucking thankfully. So yeah, I just, I don't know. I got to a point where, it was starting to work to where I didn't like it. I still felt the need, especially because if you stop using meth, you get this depression where you just can't do anything. And I had reached the end of the road with the, hold on the foreclosure. So I was losing my house. They were about to kick me out. This is 2015. I was doing everything that I could to get all of my stuff in a storage unit. At this point, I was trying to move out of the house. I was trying to just pack everything up. I had gotten a call. This, of course, this is post meltdown in the bathroom.
Yeah.
At that point, I had gotten a call now from one of my parents' good friends. My parents had moved to Reno, Nevada, 2 years prior to this point. My mom had gotten sick. She had liver failure. So she was telling me to, do whatever I could to come out and see my parents. And at this point, I hadn't talked to my parents in a couple of years. So, I didn't know what to do. And I remember thinking, I get on the phone with my mom and I'm like, hey, I really would like to see you. And, I'm kind of in a jam at the moment. I'm trying to get everything out of the house. I don't have any money. Maybe you guys could send me some money to help me out and I could move out. And she was, first thing was, no, we can't do that. Of course we can't do that. So no help there. So it took me a few months, but I had to scrap everything I could. I sold everything that I could. I put everything I wanted to keep into a storage unit. This storage unit just happened to be the same storage unit that we trained strongman at for 10 years.
Yeah, I figured
so
that. Yeah,
they knew me pretty well there. They had seen me at my top all the way to at my bottom.
So they were cool with, because there's not a lot of room in that place when you have all the implements in there. So now you're putting couches and shit in there.
Well, so at that point, I had actually, I had sold some of my equipment on the condition that he hold the rest of my equipment to one of my old training partners.
Yeah.
And so I had space for,
okay.
I had a mattress and then just basically keepsakes, trophies and essential stuff.
Yeah.
Just a little 10-foot by 10-foot space. So as I'm trying to get out of my house, I've got almost all of my stuff boxed, ready. It's in the front room. And now I'm out of time. The cops come with the moving crew. and they kicked me out. That was it. I was evicted. And when you get evicted, they take your stuff and then they ransom it back to you, basically. It's so if you're kicked out, they pack your shit up and they move it over to one place, and they either auction it off or you can buy it back. And so I had to save some money so I could buy my shit back, and then pack it up. And at this point, now I'm homeless. You know, I've got nowhere to go, and I don't have enough money to move. I'm trying to salvage what I can of the stuff that they had taken. So the day I got kicked out, I didn't have anywhere to go. I went to my storage unit it was about half full at this point. And I just kind of sat there in shock, trying to figure out the next move. And I had some stuff in the bed of my truck, so I started packing shit in there. And I started rearranging the stuff in the unit so that I could get the rest of my shit in there when I got it back from impound or whatever you want to call it. I ended up working through the night. I took a nap in my truck, but the next day, the owner came over. This is Linda and Steve at All Safe Storage on Telge Road, if anybody's in Cypress, Texas. But Steve comes over and in his Southeast Texas accent, he goes, "Travis, you know you can't stay here. You know that, right?" I'm like, "Oh, of course, man. Of course. No, I didn't mean to sleep here. I was just working late, that's all." And then I stayed again the next night, and the next night, and the next night, and they just kind of looked the other way. And, you know, I say that no one ever helped me with getting out of the mess that I was in. And for the most part, that's true. But Linda and Steve looking the other way was a big help. You know, I ended up living in that storage unit for about 2 months. And I remember one of the first nights I was there. It's one of the coldest nights I can remember. It was sleeting outside, and I had a 102-degree fever. Just fucking shitty night. Like, welcome to hell, Travis. But yeah, at that point, you know, I was still using, but I had gotten to a point where I was using less and less because I was starting to burn all of my connections. I was phasing the meth out of my life a little by little. And then after a couple months, you know, I saved the money to buy my stuff back, and then I had continued my refurbishing business while I lived there, and you know, and salvage and not salvage, but scrap. You know, I would find shit, tear it apart, and then scrap and save the money. And I saved up enough money that I could finally leave the day after Christmas, 2015. I had one last mission before I could go. I had a 2003 Dodge Dakota, and if anybody knows early 2000 Dodges, the paint always burns off. So this thing, the paint had burned off, and somewhere 2014, 2015 early, I decided I was going to strip it down and paint it myself. But in typical tweaker fashion, I got halfway through the project and then abandoned it. It was a point of pride for me. I had to finish painting my truck. I was not about to drive across the country in a half primered, half rusted, steel colored, you know, shit box.
Driver, where were you going to drive?
From Houston to Reno to go out and see my parents.
Okay.
So I took a few days, and it took me probably longer than it should have because, again, tweaker fashion and organizational skills weren't great. But I remember one day I had just gotten tape across the windshield, all the windows, the headlights, and then it was too late in the day to start painting. So then I'm like, fuck, I'll wait till tomorrow. And then I started getting hungry, so I had to take all the tape off and go get something to eat, and then bring it back and tape it all back up for the next day. It's just so much wasted time, man. God. But I got it painted. I got it painted by Christmas Day, and and I got to eat Christmas dinner with Linda and Steve and their family because they lived there on site at the storage unit. And I remember her telling me that this chili is just as hot coming out as it is going in. And and she wasn't lying, because I ate dinner with them, and the next day, it was Christmas Eve and then Christmas Day. Christmas Day, they were open for like 3 hours, and thank God they were, because I needed their bathroom, the office bathroom. So I get in, I thank Steve, he locks up for the day. I'm walking back to my unit, and then the second wave hits me. Now the office is closed, and I got the second wave coming. And she wasn't lying, man. It was hot. So I'm kind of panicked. Where the hell am I going to go? I had to go in my storage unit, grab a grocery bag and a trash can, shut the door, the storage unit door, and then just kind of halfway, because it was so crammed in there, I had one foot up on a box and the other foot down on the ground, kind of leaning back against this trash can, like hoping like hell that I didn't miss it. Mm-hmm. Oh man, I had to do that 2 or 3 more times. And God, that was a miserable experience, man. But yeah, so that was my last night. That was my last night there, because the next day I finished the paint job. I loaded my truck up, and then I started driving to Reno. And that drive was magical. I knew the drive was coming, just like I knew I was losing my house. So there's a couple things that I built up mentally into both of these. I knew I was losing my house, so I went ahead and I made all of the negativity in my life be part of that house. And I knew I wasn't able to get myself out of it, but I knew that they were coming to kick me out. So I was going to be forced out of the negativity. So I went ahead and that house became the symbol of everything holding me back. And then when they kicked me out, it was awful. It sucked, but it was liberating. That wasn't the lowest point. The lowest point was a few months before in the bathroom. Mm-hmm. that being kicked out of my house and becoming homeless was actually a point of freedom. Mm-hmm. It was the first step. The next step was going to be leaving Houston, driving to Reno. That was going to be my ride to freedom. And I built it up, and I knew it was going to be. I didn't make a big deal out of it, but I just, in my heart, knew it was going to be my ride to freedom. Like I said, I had burned all my connections, so I had a limited supply of meth left, and I had to really divvy it out and ration it out and be smart about it. And I kind of weaned myself off as I was driving across the country. I set out, I was still using, but by the time I got to Reno, I was done. It was gone. It was actually by the time I got to the Grand Canyon that it was gone. This is kind of a cool story. I drove into the Grand Canyon at like midnight one night. Snow everywhere, pitch black. I decide I'm going to take a nap. I pull over to the side of the road and I park, and I get out and I can hear the canyon in front of me. You can hear that open air. And I thought, this is kind of cool, and can't see shit, of course. So I get in my truck, I take a nap. I'm woken up the next morning by the sun coming up straight up in front of me. And then the rim of the canyon, I could see the whole thing lighting up out in front of me. That was New Year's Day, 2016. And you talk about a new beginning. That was my symbol right there. That was the moment. That was where I get the idea, the concept of the phoenix, that's so near and dear to me because of that rising sun, that rebirth. That's when that came. It was that moment at the Grand Canyon, and I realized not only am I on the right path, but I'm on the path to something great. It was life-changing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you get to your parents, then what?
So I got to my parents a couple days later. I could feel a little bit of tension, especially between my dad and I. And
you used to train with him, right?
Yeah, for years, but we just kind of had falling outs, and because I was in so much pain, I was just a miserable bastard to be around. And I think, I as much as people kind of abandoned me, I'm pretty sure I pushed most of them out. just because in my misery, I don't share the misery. I hide and keep it to myself kind of thing. So at first there was a little bit of tension. But my mom being as sick as she was, she ended up in the hospital shortly after I got there, with the liver failure complications. And I was able to, help my dad basically cook for him so that he could go to work, because he had to work in Tahoe. It's like an hour drive each way. Mm-hmm. So he was able to keep working. He knew that I was there with my mom. So somebody was watching her at the hospital. And, I was able to help my mom while she was at the hospital. I was able to help her when she got home. And I think it was because I was able to do all those things and be there for them through all of that. It kind of gave me a chance to repair that relationship.
Did it also give you a little temporary purpose?
Probably, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that absolutely had a big part in my ability to stay clean. Yeah. Because one, I burned all my old contacts, and I'm now in a new city with no contacts, and I wasn't going to find any. And then I had something to focus on. Yeah. It gave me a chance to start to rebuild and restore the relationship with my family, and it gave me a place to stay. When you've been living in a storage unit on top of a box, I had a little box that I've got a picture of it actually, a little box that I'd sleep on with a yoga mat. My feet would be up on the shelf. Going from that to a house with 4 walls and heating and air conditioning was kind of nice. But yeah, I mean, I remember my dad telling me at one point, maybe a month, 6 weeks after I got there, my mom had been in the hospital for like 3 weeks. And he looks at me and he goes, man, you know what? I'm really glad that you're here. I'm really glad that you're here. And I think that right there kind of melted away the years of any animosity, of any problems that we had. And we've been close since. We were close before. He was always my best friend. We were training together. So it was nice to repair that relationship.
Then at what point did you re-engage back into training again?
So I got to Reno on the 7th of January, 2016. My first day back in the gym was the 15th.
Why did you go back, though?
Once I got the drugs out of my system, I got the urge to lift again. It was weird. When I started using drugs that were hard, it started to rewire my brain in such a way that I listened to different music. I was interested in different topics. I became a different person, personality-wise. It was weird. So it really does, especially something like meth, it hijacks the way you think. So weightlifting was not part of that personality. And then once I cleared that shit out of my system, I started to revert back to who I really am, which is weightlifting is everything.
But you left it because you hated it. I mean, you got to a point where you hated it.
Exactly. But I was on a lot of pills at that time. Okay. And I think that was part of a little bit because I was pushing through all the pain. Yeah. But because my brain was hijacked and I was still training through the pills. I didn't like it, but I still did it. It's when I started the meth that I completely quit. That's when I couldn't lift anymore. Not only did I not like it, but I couldn't make myself do it either.
Would it be safe to say during the years that you hated it, you forgot why you loved it? Because of the pain pills and all the other stuff, it numbed that?
Yeah, probably. And especially with the painkillers. With the meth, you're so distorted that there's no chance of remembering why you love anything. Yeah. It is a really powerful drug. But yeah, on the 15th, I started lifting. I remember doing 55-pound dumbbells for 2 sets of 8 on incline bench, and that was all I had. That was it, man. What
did that feel like, though?
Well, on the one hand, it felt amazing.
Yes.
On the other hand, it hurt and it sucked. And I was like, holy shit.
It's a weird, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember the first day that I deadlifted. I was able to pull 405 for 3 reps, but I felt like I had broken my back. And I thought, how in the hell did I ever do what I used to do? I pulled like 900 pounds. Like, how the fuck? You know, that hill that I knew I had to climb turned into a mountain at that point. You know? It's like, oh my God, I got a long way to go. But week in, week out, I just kept going. I didn't do it because of the numbers. I did it because I was feeling good. I did it because I just wanted to.
Yes.
I was enjoying the process. And little by little, I got stronger quickly. You know, for a good portion of that, probably the first year, the muscle memory really took hold. And I made a lot of progress quickly.
Were you ever thinking about making a comeback of those first days?
That's something that never left my mind.
Okay.
That's something, even when I was at my darkest, I always had it in the back of my head that I was going to make something out of this.
Okay.
You know, it was, even when I was at my darkest days, I was like, there's got to be a reason why I'm fucking in this absolute hellhole. I don't know if I went through it because this was my purpose, and to get through it and to show others that there's hope on the other side, or if I made that my purpose and that's what got me through it. Mm-hmm. You know, it doesn't really matter which one came, because they both yielded the same result. And here I am on the other side, able to show people that there is life after addiction. You know,
when did you know, training wise, that it was a real possibility? You know, because the strength is coming back pretty quick, but you're still, you still want to do it. I'm sure there's no doubt that you think you can do it, but there's also got to be that little bit of a doubt of, is this going to come back the same or better? When did you know it could come back better?
I think I always just held on to that and didn't let myself believe anything else.
Okay.
I think I made that a priority. But there was definitely times where that mountain got a lot taller in front of me.
Yeah. Well, you had close to a decade of letting your joints heal in a fucked up way.
That's the thing. You know, I had somebody say that to me once. They're like, well, you know, you took all that time off. Your body's got to be pretty healthy now. I'm like, well, I didn't necessarily treat it in such a way that was conducive to healing. But
no, but what was breaking down, you know, the muscles and joints and all that other kind of stuff. Yeah, I wasn't at a point where your organs is another story.
Yeah. But I think meth, honestly, I think it breaks down your tendons and stuff too, because that's how I tore my bicep.
Okay.
Was during 2014, so this is a year and a half after stopping training, 2 years. Mm-hmm. I actually tore my bicep moving a wet punching bag in my backyard. You know, I ripped it off, and I had to have that reattached. But I think it dries you out so much that everything becomes brittle. Yeah.
And what were you thinking at that time? Because that's got to be kind of fucked up,
it was
right?
Really frustrating.
Because you're like, no, wait a minute.
All fucking times, exactly. 12 years of strongman, and I tear my bicep now. Yeah, this is stupid as shit.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But, you know, I just held on to that belief that no matter what was going to happen, I was always going to make my return. I was always coming back to World's Strongest Man. I was always going to get there. And then, like I said, that first year, the muscle memory kicked in pretty hard. But I learned something about what meth does to your body. And I also learned that I've done what nobody in sport has ever done. And what I mean by that is there have been guys who have retired or kind of fallen off and then made it back to the top of their sport. But nobody's ever done it the way that I have. And as you got guys, let's say an athlete builds a 100-story skyscraper. That's the structure. That's most people are, 10 stories, 20 stories. Athletes build a 100-story skyscraper. When you retire or you stop training as hard, you don't lose the top stories. They just kind of fall into disrepair. Mm-hmm. Let's say, the top 20 or 30 stories are in dire need of renovation. when you start training again, you can renovate those top 20 or 30 stories pretty fast. What I did was knock the top 30 stories off completely and then let the 20 or 30 stories below that fall into disrepair, because that's what meth does to you. It breaks down muscle proteins so much that I had to rebuild new tissue that wasn't there before after about 70% of the way. So here I am, you know, I'm back up, built up to 70 floors pretty quick. And every floor after that, I've had to fight for every inch of it. So that's why, you know, and that's one of the things that keeps me going, because I know that nobody's ever done that. It is kind of cool to be able to say that, you know, you're doing something that is pretty much been deemed impossible.
Yes. So it was last year's World's Strongest Man you were in, right?
Yeah.
And how did that go? What did that feel like?
Oh man, it was overwhelming. It was overwhelming. It was really, really cool to be back. I did not compete as well as I wanted to. I had about 2 months notice, and I think I crammed, because it was 10 years from 2011 to 2021 since I had been there. I crammed that 10 years into the 2 months of training beforehand. And I came in just fried. Kind of an amateur rookie move, but I was zapped, and I had a little bit of a hamstring injury. And then the very first event, we had a barrel loading and anvil load and heavy 815-pound frame carry. I picked up the first barrel, and I snapped a pulley tendon in my finger. And then I picked up the frame, and of course my grip starts to slip, so I have to pick up the frame a third time. I take a step, and I tear that little chunk in my hamstring that was injured. So on the first event, I got 2 fucking injuries. It's like a nice slap in the face. Welcome back to Worlds.
Yeah,
you sure you want to be here?
Yeah.
It's like, God damn. You know, but I fought through the competition, and I did all right. It definitely wasn't the performance that I wanted, but I think I can make it back, and I think I know that I can improve on that for sure.
Well, the perspective's got to change a little bit now, because with a few different injuries, you know, earlier in your career, you're depressed, you're upset. It's super bad, right? You think it's the worst thing in the world. It's obviously it's not the worst thing in the world. You've seen the worst thing in the world.
That's a big thing. Yeah, absolutely. Perspective is everything. I have literally stared the devil in the face. And, you know, when he asked me if I was done, I told him I'm not ready to give up yet. That's when I started climbing my way out of hell. But when you get an injury, when you've had as many injuries as I've had, now I just think it's just another chunk. It's like, well, shit, you know, there goes another chunk. And then you just keep going. You find a way to keep going.
What are you going to change about your training moving forward? You know, because injuries are obviously it's a part of this, right? We all know that. You all understand that. But mitigating it and preventing it's a big part of it too. So how, looking forward to, I mean, how many times have you competed since you've been back? That's the first question.
Oh, shit. So
have you dialed it back?
Compared to what I was doing, I was averaging 18 a year.
Yeah.
The most I've done was 7 in a year since coming back, which is still a lot more than most. But
well, if that's, say if you're one of your own clients, what would you tell them about that?
Oh man, don't put me in that spot. Yeah, you know, it comes down to what it is that you're wanting to do. What are your goals? And for me, I think I'm finally starting to take my own advice. Like at first I did the 7 because I just wanted to compete. I wanted to get out there and I wanted to get the experience and my name back out, let people know I was competing again.
You probably had to though.
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit. The year that I competed at Worlds last year, I probably should have done 1 fewer competition than I did leading up to Worlds. You know, I got the notice for the invite for World's Strongest Man right before I went to Russia to compete, and I probably should have pulled out of the Russia competition so that I could focus on World's Strongest Man. But as a person, as an athlete, if somebody takes the time to invite me and has paid for my ticket, I'm going to show up.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to pull out. I'm not like that. So I went ahead and did it. But I think the thing now is trying to figure out the balance between the proper number of competitions and the proper timing of those competitions. Because if you can do 2 or 3 in a row, if you're healthy and you can do 2 or 3 in a row, I think that's the way to go. And then peak twice a year. That would be ideal for me. But I do a lot of competitions with Strongman Champions League. And the way they work is they've got between like 12 and 16 competitions a year. And you score points based on your placing at each competition. And then with those points, they take the top 10 guys and they go to the finals. So it's kind of like, I think Formula One does it this way. Yeah. And then depending on your points going into the finals, if you're the leader, you start off with 12 points. The second place guy starts off with 11. So for me, being an American and this being primarily European, I always start off way down the field because I can't do as many contests. I think the best place that I've started off was in 8th position, and when it came to the final overall scores, if we'd have done it like a normal contest, I think I'd have been 2nd, but I ended up 4th because the points, which it really sucks. But that's what I mean by if I can do 2 or 3 in a row, build up those points when I'm peaked early in the season and then do another peak for the finals. That would be the ideal way for me to compete, I think.
What's the overall objective here?
So I've got 2. I want to win the Champions League finals.
Yes. And
then I really would love to win World's Strongest Man.
Yes.
Can I win World's Strongest Man? I've got to fix a few things, but I can definitely kick some ass and make it hard for someone else to win World's Strongest Man.
What do you think you need to do to be in the position to do that when you say fix a few things?
So I don't know. There's a few things that I've got going on that I'm still trying to figure out. Like last year, after World's Strongest Man, I kind of had a shitty year. I don't know exactly what it was. Maybe having COVID started things off. But later in the year, as I was competing overseas, I would just feel really drained. And when I'd get home, I'd feel even worse. The last 3 months of the year when I was trying to train for the Champions League finals, I think I had a total of 3 decent weeks of training just because my system was so screwed up. And that resulted, when I got to the Champions League finals in Turkey, that resulted in me getting a leg infection somehow. I got a scratch from one of the implements, don't know, but it settled in my ankle area. And then it was halfway on the flight home, I started feeling the pain from that infection. And then, 5 hours later when we landed, I could barely walk. And then as soon as I got home, I went straight to the hospital and ended up stuck in the hospital for 8 days with what was called tenosynovitis, which is just an infection deep in the tendinous area of the ankle. And, that infection was, first off, I lost 37 pounds in 8 days. I had a PICC line for 6 weeks after that where I had to go in daily for IV antibiotics. And it just screwed my system up so bad that when I started training earlier this year, if I did a hard workout, it would take a week to a week and a half to recover from it. I don't know if you're familiar with muscle protein breakdown. I'm assuming CK levels and stuff like that. I had rhabdo and the leg infection at the same time, so my CK levels were 20,000. They should be at 200 or less. And they were still elevated months later. When I tried to figure out what the hell was going on, I got a really in-depth blood analysis by a functional medicine doctor who this made a huge difference in how I was feeling. Figured out that my CK levels were still at the 5,000 mark. My vitamin D was extremely low. Vitamin K was extremely low. Omegas were low. Estrogen was high. Everything that could be off was off. Basically what it pointed to was I was still fighting the leg infection. Yeah. And, I got on rather than taking the 20 supplements that I was, just a handful of darts at the dartboard hoping something stuck, we eliminated 18 of those things, and I take just a couple supplements that are geared at exactly what I need, and it made a huge difference. But I'm still on that uphill battle.
Yeah.
The CK levels, the muscle protein breakdown is still about 3,000. So my body's still fighting the leg infection. It's still trying to get better. So I've just kind of, I think, chalked it up to this being a year of just having to rebuild.
Yeah.
So my plan now is to back things down as far as the intensity and the weight that I use during training. I'm going to relearn movement patterns. I'm going to start over and try to rebuild a brand new athlete, basically.
Yes.
Because I'm already forced to train lighter.
Yes.
And I just did these 2 competitions. I did all right. I ended up 5th in Poland last week. It's all right, but it's not my quality, not what I deem acceptable. So
how do you lay the training out? I mean, what's a basic microcycle or week look like?
That's what I'm still trying to figure out. I've actually hired a coach that's going to help me with this, and I think the first 6 weeks is probably going to be, as far as the weights go, nothing over 50 or 60%.
Yeah.
But it'll be more movement based. Like, how do I jump? How do I run? How do I walk? What does my gait look like? Fixing my feet, because I've got a left collapsed arch. So we're going to try and strengthen that. We're going to try and, when I'm pressing overhead, what arm is moving where? Where's the stiffness?
So re-education is basically what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I think in the 6 weeks I'm trying to do that. That'll give my joints and tendons, everything, a nice break from the heavy training that I was doing leading up to these previous 2 competitions.
So during this 6 weeks, what are you going to do with your calorie level? I mean, because you got to eat a fuck ton, right? So
it'll probably stay in the 6,000 or 7,000 range.
Is that what is that though? Is that for you moderate or is that high?
Pretty normal.
So normal. So you're not pushing it, just maintenance.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's so it'll be strict. It'll be most likely no cheat meals.
Yeah.
And my cheat meal is my favorite cheat meal is a Papa Murphy's pizza with a bunch of shit on it.
Yeah.
And then a pint of Haagen-Dazs ice cream afterward. So we're talking like 4,000 calories.
That's like John Anderson shit, right?
John Anderson? Yeah. He's probably done something similar. John's actually, he's a mentor and a coach of mine. So, yeah, I love John.
Yeah. No, it sounds like one of his meals, one of those things he puts in there. That one of the things I think people don't really understand with strongman is there's the whole training aspect. Then there's the strength endurance aspect that's in there, but there's the eating aspect where I don't think they really get that, because it's a lot,
I've been working with Nathan Payton as far as the diet portion goes. And it's been, for me, relatively moderate eating. The 6,000 calories is pretty easy for me to put down in a day.
Yes.
But we're trying to keep me at, a certain body weight, 140 kilos, 145 kilos. And I've gotten a little bit above that lately because I've had too many cheat meals the last couple months. But yeah, as far as, when I'm staying strict on it, it's easy to eat. When I'm trying to gain, when you're pushing 8,000 or 9,000 calories a day, that's when you're chewing so much it becomes a second job.
Yeah. I mean, with 2 decades doing this, where do you think your optimal weight is? Right? Because there's always that, I could always say put 80 pounds on, right? And you could do that, but is that going to help you? Where, say, other strongmen, it may help them tremendously to be heavier. Because you're leaner than a lot of the other ones, but height plays a big role in this whole thing too. Where if you were 400 pounds, do you think that you would be better or worse?
I mean, that's one of those things. Like, let's say 330 pounds right now. Yeah. Feels uncomfortable. But if I was 330 pounds after being 350 pounds, I'd probably feel a lot better.
Yes.
So what I'm working on right now is I was feeling good at 315, so I've pushed to 335.
Yes.
with the intention of going back to 320 to 325 and feeling good there.
Yes.
So I think I'll be pretty light on my feet at 320.
Mm-hmm.
When I was feeling like shit at 320 a few months ago,
mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense. It's just, it's a weird sport, right? Because you'll have some of the guys in the 400s,
Yeah.
you know, that are winning. And then other guys, I can't think of the lighter end, you know, you would, many think that the higher body weight's going to be the person that wins, but that's not actually always the case.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not event based either, you know, because it used to be, well, if they're doing the longer duration events, the heavier guys can't do it. But
well, now you have the heavier guys that are athletic.
That's what I'm saying. That's not the case anymore. You know, it might have been the case with O.D. Wilson when they were using a barbell on their back running around a track.
Yeah.
Or whatever that was.
Yeah, stack of bricks.
Yeah, they're not doing that shit anymore.
Yeah.
You know, so it seems to me like it's more finding that optimal weight and then doing like what you're talking about. You know, push it over it and then bring it down so you feel better.
That's exactly that's been my take for years, and that's what you know. I guess initially it was always gain more, get bigger, get huge,
but you can't,
at all costs.
Yeah, your lower back can't move and you can't breathe.
Exactly. So I think what we're finding is I feel really good around the 320 mark. With this recent spike in my weight and dropping down, hopefully I feel really good at 325. If I don't feel light on my feet, then I'll drop back down to 320.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I guess it'll just come down to how high can I jump? How fast can I run? What do my feet feel like? That'll kind of be the indicator of how much I should weigh at that time.
What indicators or metrics do you use to be able to determine where you're at in time? Because you just said how high do you jump and stuff like that. There's, say with conjugate when I was powerlifting, there were certain indicators. Like if my floor press was this, I knew this was this. If my close grip incline, I knew this was. So I had these metrics that if I'm doing these, I know I'm here. Is a gauge.
I see what you're saying.
You know, so what are the gauges that you use? Because it's more than just the lifts in the gym. There's also the events as well.
You know, I guess I didn't have exact predictor numbers. Like if my floor press is this, then I know my bench is going to be this. I knew that if I could jump to a 54-inch box with no weight vest on, then I'm feeling light on my feet. If I can load a 460 or 500-pound Atlas stone, then I'm flexible and mobile enough and fast enough.
Yes.
That that's where I need to be. If I can get out of bed and my feet don't hurt, then I'm not carrying too much weight.
Mm-hmm.
And stairs is another pretty good predictor for me. If it hurts to take 2 steps at a time, then I'm probably too heavy or I'm overtrained. If I can go down the stairs and I don't feel pain, then I'm doing something right.
What are the markers for where your strength is? Like your strength, say you're in the gym doing something and it's too low. You're like, this is too low, my strength is down. Is there any markers like that?
Yeah, deadlift is a big one.
Okay.
Deadlift is a big one. So if I'm pulling less than 800 and it's feeling heavy, then I know I'm definitely not in the realm of where I need to be.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm pulling, I guess 8 plates is more like the good marker for me. If 8 plates feels light, then I know I'm where I need to be competition-wise. If 8 plates feels slow and heavy, then I got some work to do.
Is there anything that gauges the upper body events that you do?
Yeah, usually it's not lately, but yes, used to be. For me, axle was always if I could clean and press high 300s, 380 or something like that. If that felt easy, then I knew my press was strong.
Yeah.
Log press would be if I'm pressing 350 in the gym, then my press is strong. Because my gym lifts don't necessarily carry over to my competition lifts.
Well, that's where I was going to go with this. If those things feel where they need to be, do you pull back on them in the gym and focus on other things?
Well, probably should have.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Let's say you go in the gym and you just kill an 800-pound deadlift. I mean, it's a joke. You feel like you could have done it for 8. Do you start thinking, okay, let's just back off the pulls. It's where it needs to be for what I need to do. and let's focus on a different weak point.
So that's something that I have started to figure out lately. For most of my career, it was, okay, it's never enough. Yes, this is feeling good, but it's never enough. So let's keep the pedal down. We're going to keep, full steam ahead. Now, being a little bit smarter, and really it comes from the lessons that I've learned training my athletes, because I have to actually know what I'm talking about in order to teach them and coach them. It has taught me so much about what I should be doing with my own training.
Yes.
And how to listen to myself for my own programming. So yes, when I'm feeling an 800-pound deadlift is light and I can pull it for reps, then that's something I would kind of put on a like a back burner. Like, let's just maintain where we're at, and we're going to focus on my overhead press a little bit. If my speed is feeling really good on yoke and farmers, then I would do 1 in 3 or 4 workouts where I go heavy, and then I would drop it back to 70% for speed for the other workouts. But yeah, that's kind of how I would do that now, is not pedal to the metal all the time.
Well, you have to change the perspective a little bit. It's when I was competing, there was 2 phases that I had. Now, I didn't have this big gap like what you had, right? My first phase as a teenager going up before I came to Westside was longer duration. Like, I'm looking 3 years out. Like, here's where I want to be in 3 years. Here's where I want to be in 3 years. Here's where I want to be in 3 years. And then towards the later end, it was, this is a bonus year. This is a bonus year. It's because I can't say there's 4 years is going to be too fucked up. Like, but it's a dangerous place too, right? Because you're like, look, if this is the last year, then fuck it. We're doing this, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like your 1 week. I'm just going to take 1 week, to like get over this. Shit, right? And then you end up in this spiral hell where you're sitting
4 years of misery.
4 years of fucking darkness. But then after a while, you start to realize, no, wait a minute. The only way I'm going to get those extra years is to economize what I'm doing. Don't do the shit that's going to excessively tear me down so I can't perform, but do the things I need to do to be able to perform so I just make it that year and then that next year and stuff like. So it's those 2 phases, right? Where you can increase the duration of that phase 2 by being smarter. And I think you can actually be better, right? Because you're not going to make the mistakes that you made when you're young. The gift of being younger is you can make a lot of stupid mistakes and still recover from it. Because there's not all that accumulated damage, You can't do that when you're older, but now you have the knowledge, of what that was younger, and working with the clients that you have, like you said, is reinforcing all that, because it's like I've asked you a couple of times so far today, like, well, what did you tell your clients? Like,
This is why I have coaches, that's why I have 3 of my own coaches.
Yes. But the more you help other people, the more it's going to reinforce that, and
that's exactly it. Well, I mean, what you're saying, where you have your phases, that's actually a really good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
You have what I call my first life, and then my second rebirth life in this sport. That's one of the lessons that I don't think I really figured out until maybe a couple of years ago, where probably post World's Strongest Man, or maybe I figured it out before World's Strongest Man and I just ignored it and pushed hard as I could anyway, because that's just, that's the mentality. I have to have somebody watching my back to keep me from myself, because when I get focused going forward, I forget all of those little things that I've put in place to, like, hey, here's a checklist of, if we're at this point with the deadlift, if I'm feeling good, let's drop it back. I get greedy and I want more. And I think that every year is my last year. And so I think actually the way you say that, where, you talk about just arranging things in such a way that you have more balance to what it is you're trying to do, and you have more thought going into what are you going to do 6 months from now? What are you going to focus on now? How are you going to build off of now in 6 months? That's the things that I'm starting to learn now. That's what I'm starting to implement at this point. And again, going back to what I've done with my clients, that helping them through that has taught me how to do it for myself.
Mm-hmm.
So
with, that, having people to watch your back, is, how comfortable are you really with that? Because, you had people watching your back before and they all banded you.
Oh, well, yeah. So the people I've got watching my back now are hired coaches.
I see how that works.
Yeah. I got some good training partners now. No, but, yeah, when you bring that up, I don't know if you're ever quite comfortable trusting anybody. There's a little bit of a positive experience and a little bit of a negative experience when everybody has turned their back on you. That's a scar that you'll never quite get over, but it's really powerful to know how hard you are to kill. When you're left by yourself, no one's going to help you. It's just you, and you can survive it. That's powerful, and I think that's a lesson that's worth learning, honestly. Is it a lesson that's worth learning at the expense of trusting people for the rest of your life? I think that's something you have to suck up and realize that as much as you don't want to, it's a coward's way out not to trust people. That, to me, it's the easy way out. So I have tried to put my trust in people. I a lot of those negative experiences of feelings of abandonment, I have worked really hard to get over those, to just let that go and realize that that's not how I want to live my life. I don't want to live my life by myself. I've been by myself. I know what that's like. I know I can survive, So now if I'm strong enough to do that, I'm strong enough to let other people in my life. And that's how I live now.
How have you seen the sport change? I mean, you're away from it for a while. Man. So you got a really interesting perspective, because you're embraced in it at the highest level, then you're completely see nothing of it. Well, you're still watching, right?
I wasn't. I was
completely away. Yeah. Then you come back, and is it a whole different sport than when you left?
For the most part, yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of, well, for one, the strongman lifespan is about 4 or 5 years. And I was gone for that chunk of time. So almost everybody that I competed with was gone and had been gone. And there was a whole slew of people who came in and left in that time it took me to come back. A perfect example is Eddie Hall. Eddie Hall was in 2012 after I stopped competing, won World's Strongest Man in 2017, and was done competing by the time I came back to my first competition. So I've seen in my career basically 5 generations of strongmen come and go. And at the very beginning, let's just put it this way, I was one of the first people on earth to load a 400-pound Atlas stone. Not the first, but one of probably the first 10 or 15. And I was just an amateur when I did it. I was the first man to ever load a 500-pound Atlas stone, 2005, I believe. Now, Tom Stoneman has done 638 or something like that, and there's probably 8 guys that have done 500 pounds or more, maybe 10. It's just that you see the bar rising so quickly. And I remember the bar rising quickly when I started. From between 2002 and 2010 was a massive difference in how hard the sport got. And you would have thought that maybe that would have slowed down a little bit, but it just kept going right along and increasing in difficulty. Just nothing was held back. Nothing was slowed down. I looked at the sport, and then I see guys like Brian Shaw at 440 pounds. When I remember Brian at 380 pounds, and then Half Thor at 450 pounds. Like, it seemed like everybody was a freaking giant all of a sudden. And, it made it a little overwhelming to think I'm going to get back there. I still had that tiny little voice barely speaking up that I'm going to get the world's strongest man. but all this loud noise in the front was like, holy shit, this isn't going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What other things outside of that? Just, federation wise, popularity wise.
Oh man, popularity wise, it has exploded.
Mm-hmm.
It is. I remember doing pro shows, there were basically glorified amateur shows. They were in parking lots.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have $1,000 for first place. I remember World's Strongest Man having like $25,000 for first place, and then last year the Rogue Invitational had like $150,000 first place prize, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So the prize money, just the prestige has just skyrocketed, especially when you see all those arena shows in England being sold out. The one that I did a couple weeks ago in England was completely sold out. It was pretty badass.
How many of these shows are invitational? Most of them?
At the pro level, yeah. Anything Giants Live, anything Strongman Champions League, they're all invitational. You have some, let's say for Americans, you have some American Strongman Corporation,
mm-hmm.
or Strongman Corp, whatever it's called now. It's changed name like 5 times. But there are some that are just kind of open to whoever wants to come. You pay an entry
mm-hmm.
fee, you fight for a prize purse. But anything outside of that circuit is going to be invitational.
Right. Now, I don't think they'll ever admit this, but do you think the social media presence matters in that equation?
Oh, hell yeah. I think that's what's completely opened the sport up. Yeah, I think, especially for World's Strongest Man, Giants Live.
Well, it's opened it up, but let's say you got a great competitor that's got 2,000 followers. It doesn't open it up for that person.
As far as their invitation?
Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen guys get invited seemingly based on their social media presence.
Can you say the opposite, that you've seen good guys not invited because they don't have that? Let me ask a better question. Have you seen people still be able to compete that don't have the big following?
I've seen a couple guys that don't have the big following that are competing because they are good enough.
Okay.
But if you are just as good
mm-hmm.
as most of the top guys, they're going to pick the guy who's got a larger social media following.
No, I get it, because it's, they want more eyes, they want views.
And if you're, this guy or this guy, A or B, could be just as good, they're going to pick the guy that's just got a bigger following. That's just the way it is.
Yes.
I don't think it's hard to say that there's anybody good enough that's not getting an invite.
Yeah.
Because there's just so many good guys that it's easy to say, well, there were already enough good guys competing.
Yes.
So it's hard.
There's obviously there's going to be pros and cons of the conversation no matter how you look at it, right? Because sponsorships are not going to be paying your bills. The prize money might. If you combine the two, it's for some, it's probably enough, but for bottom level pros, no. Yeah. But building their own social media presence will allow, the coaching and the other revenue streams that aren't dependent upon how you place.
So that's the thing that I've seen change the most about the sport is your ability to make a living from the sport.
From yourself.
For me, me as an athlete.
Yes.
I don't need, whereas I used to have to compete to be, because I was dependent on prize money.
Yes.
Now I have a whole business that functions off of however I do at a contest. Yes. I don't have to win. I don't have to, just the fact that I can, put up a good result and show that I know what I'm talking about. I can build this whole coaching business.
Yes.
Because, people can see who I am. They can see how hard I work. They can see, if I'm the kind of guy they want as a coach, it's right there. It's all over the internet. So that builds that business for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that was necessarily an opportunity my first time around.
No, I don't think so. I think all this is a better thing for you guys.
Absolutely.
Because you don't have to become dependent upon a sponsor, then always worry about losing, that sponsor.
Yeah.
Or wonder why, because there's a time, and there's been several companies where a lot of the biggest shows were put on and sponsored by X supplement company, but then X supplement company would sponsor some of the guys, but not some of the others. So that puts you in a weird ass place. And where now you're not dependent upon any of those, so it gives you more freedom, to if you do want to be sponsored by a company, it's your choice. You don't feel like, oh shit, I have to, because it's going to pay for this, or this.
Yeah. And it has opened, in my opinion, it's opened the way or paved the way for a lot more sponsorship opportunities.
Yes.
I know it has for me. I was never very good at getting sponsors back in the day. And now I've just got a modest following, but I've had several people reach out to me as far as working with me. So those are sponsorships that I never would have gotten back in the day.
But I think at the end of the day, those are still going to pale in comparison to you building your own client base.
Absolutely.
Because they can go away. The client base can just build and build and build. And it's the other good thing about that is you've already kind of demonstrated it here as we've been talking, is you always want to learn from people better than you, because they've been where you've not been. Yeah. So, and you're doing that. You've always done that. You build those relationships, like, how the fuck do you do this, and all that. But you learn a lot by helping the people underneath, that want to come up.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you need both,
Yeah, for me, I've learned a tremendous amount from my mentors and coaches.
Yes.
But I learn best through teaching.
Exactly.
So when I'm teaching my clients, it's really reinforcing that knowledge and making me understand at a deeper level. So it's ups my game a lot to have the clients that I need to then teach to. I think that's just kind of inherent trait in me. I've always been a teacher. Yeah. I come from a long line of teachers and preachers, actually. My whole family's been teachers on one side, preachers on the other. So it's just kind of a genetic thing, I think. I can't help but share knowledge.
Yes. Yes. What are some of the common pitfalls that you see with your clients?
In what regard?
Training first.
It depends on the client. It depends on what their goal is. It depends on, because I have people who are general fitness. I have people who are competition focused. I have people that just want to learn how to do strongman, and everything in between. The things that I see are, I guess the two things that stand out the most to me for my competition focused guys is one, the lack of belief in their ability. I really try to instill that self-confidence. It is important to me that whether I'm that person's coach or not, they can take whatever information I've given them and be successful with it. That ultimately means I've done my job successfully. And in order to be successful in that, they need to know the material, but they need to know that they can implement that material and be successful in doing so. So confidence is a big thing. The other one.
Well, with that one real quick, tell me about a time that situation was true. You don't need to mention the client's name, but you figured out that they don't have the belief that they do. How did that all work out?
So I've got, let's say one guy who is always in his head too much. Doesn't believe that he's worthy. Doesn't believe that he should be where he is. So we've spent a lot of time talking, kind of getting to the root of some of those beliefs, kind of figuring out, what do these beliefs actually mean? Why are these beliefs actually in place? So like beliefs that, let's just say he believes he's inadequate. He doesn't believe, like imposter syndrome. He doesn't believe he really should be doing what he's doing. So we come up with things to figure out what it is. And one of the things that came up was, family history and how he grew up and how he was treated by adult figures in his life, how he's treated by girlfriends, friends, just things that hit his self-confidence. So we get to the root of these things, and basically what I try to give this person is the idea that anything and everything that they've gone through is a positive experience, even if it was a negative one, because it's led them to where they are now. And where they are now means they're here talking to me, for one, but they're actually fighting to improve him or herself. He's sought me out, means he wants to be better, means he wants to do the best thing possible in his life. And it took all of that shit to get him to that point, to make that push. So that's the first step, is to accept all the things that have happened to you. And this is what I do with myself. I accept all the things that have happened to me so that they were good and they were bad, but it doesn't matter if they were good or they were bad. They led me to the point that I'm at now. And this is the only point that actually matters. So once we've gotten to that, I then just try to piece together the little things to do throughout the day so that we're not looking down here. We're looking here in front, right in front. Let's just focus on that next step. You know, the analogy I use is like a long highway at night. You know, all you can see, you're trying to do a 2,000-mile drive, but all you can see is 200 feet in front of you. And you just keep driving because you have faith that the road is going to be there for the next 200 feet and the next 200 feet. So I get them to have that faith, to start focusing on the first 200 feet in front of them and to keep going forward. And then we just implement the little things like, you know, I guess putting, if you could put all the pieces into play, you get confidence because you have put in the work, you put in the effort, you put in the time to put those pieces in the proper place. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So with this person, what happened next?
So what we got to was we were trying to do a competition, and he kept wanting to put it off because training wasn't going well. This wasn't going well. Sleep wasn't going well. And so I finally got to the point where I said, no, fuck it. We're not going to restart this program. We're not going to, whatever happens, I don't care how bad it is. It's good. We're going to keep going forward. This is your contest date. And that's that. And that's that. So no matter what happened during this training, I taught him how to focus on the positive and how to get the best out of it and to keep going forward mentally so that when the contest came up, he was ready no matter what. And then he did do the contest, and he actually, you know, PR'd a few things. And I think it hit home that because he put in the work, because he put in the time to put in all those little pieces, that he saw the payoff of all of that preparation. And he knows that if he's prepared for things in the future, this is the result.
How did he feel after the competition?
Oh, shoot, ecstatic.
Yeah?
Yeah. You know, it was full force, gung-ho, ready to do the next one.
How did you feel after that?
It was a celebration for me. It was a celebration. When I saw the events that he did and the results that he got, he'd send me training videos or the videos of those events. And I remember screaming at my phone watching it, you know, like kind of celebrating because I have just as much fun watching my clients succeed as I do succeeding myself.
Yeah. No, I can see it in your eyes right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's something I can't help. I love seeing that. And I love seeing when somebody has believed a certain way about themselves for so long and they believe so deeply that they are less than or inadequate or they can't do something.
Yeah.
And then I help get the bullshit out of the way. And I help open their eyes to seeing and achieving and believing and becoming something greater than they ever thought they could. I mean, that's my fucking life's purpose right there. When I see that, I get ecstatic and I feel absolutely elated. So yeah, it kind of gets me a little worked up thinking about it because
had you not gone through all that you've gone through, would you have been able to do those things to him?
Probably not to the level that I do because, you know, it's kind of my belief of if you haven't been there and done that, then I don't really want to hear your opinion on it. So first things first, I let people know that I haven't exactly been in their shoes, because nobody's been in their shoes, but I've been in a similar situation. And because I've walked that road and I've felt the time under tension, as I call it, when you're actually in that moment.
I'm not talking that. I'm talking the self-belief, the wanting to end your life, all the darkness.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
I call it experiencing that firsthand.
Yeah.
You know, you can read about it in a book.
Yeah.
But you can only learn so much about it in a book. You learn way more when you have that time under tension, as I call it, where you're walking the walk. You're actually taking the time and you're feeling the day by day. And you get that experience.
Yeah.
I think when you're talking to someone who's going through something similar and you're like, hey, I've been there. You know, I know what this feels like. I know I'm not you, but I've been in a situation where I've felt something similar. Yeah. It gives them confidence in you. And when they have confidence in you and you take that confidence that what they've given you and you return it to them in a way that boosts them up, you know, that's my responsibility as someone that they put their faith in. If I can take their faith and I can build them up with it, that's changing their life. That's changing their life. And I see that person become something greater than they thought they could be. Mm-hmm. And that right there is why I do what I do. Mm-hmm.
What are some of the other pitfalls? Because I cut you off. You had one, you know, that you talked about, the limiting self-belief with the clients. What's another one?
Oh,
it can be training wise, nutrition wise, whatever. Issues that you see with your clients.
You have guys that are 225 pounds that see Brian Shaw or Eddie Hall, or, you know, their food challenges, 10,000, 12,000 calories in a meal, and they think they want to do that. You got to eat big to get big, right?
Yeah.
So then they do these massive, huge 10,000 calorie a day diets, and they're completely not sustainable. And you end up just gaining a bunch of shit weight. You know, you gain 50 or 60 pounds in the first year, but 40 of it will be fat. Mm-hmm.
So, how do you suggest that they do get bigger or gain weight?
You know, there's a few different approaches that I take. And it kind of comes down to what their goals are. If they're wanting to do the strongman based focused training, then I have them basically, we start out at a certain amount of protein, a certain amount of veggies, a certain amount of fats per day. It's portion sizes. I don't really worry about the calories so much. So let's just, as an example, we'll start out with a 5-ounce diet. So we'll have 5 ounces of protein. You can substitute any protein in. Any 5 eggs counts.
Yeah.
5 ounces of meat, 5 ounces of fish. Then we'll do like a half cup to a cup of veggies. And then we'll do a tablespoon of fats. And so I give them a list of fats: almond butter, coconut oil, basically any kind of nut butter, all natural, you know, really high nutritious foods, because what we're looking for is nutrient density. We want essential fats, nutrient density, we want quality protein, and then we want a wide variety of those things. So that's why I have the certain portions in place with the open, you know, whatever you want to put in there, because the goal is to get that wide assortment. So you get the wide assortment of amino acids, a big amino acid profile, essential fatty acids of a large range of those, lots of different micronutrients, lots of basically that assortment to keep you sane as well. You know, once they have gotten that down, and I should mention, we also drop carbohydrates out at the beginning. Not because we're trying to lose body fat sometimes, but usually because we're just trying to get the metabolism set up in a way that it's cranking hot. So what we'll do is we'll drop the carbs out at first. Once they can get through all 6 meals, or 7 meals, depending on how big the athlete is, I will start increasing their portions accordingly. So let's say we'll add an ounce of fat, or a tablespoon of fat, and we'll add an ounce of protein to each one of their meals. the way we know when to do that is what their body is telling us. Is it hungry? Are their energy levels up? If they're feeling tired, we increase the food or we increase the frequency. If they're getting hungry between meals, we start increasing the frequency or we increase the portion. If they're getting stronger, then we know we're on the right track. If they're burning fat, we're on the right track. If their energy levels crash, we throw in snacks. Basically, we keep it so that they're always eating, and then keeping to what I call my 3 rules of thumb. Never hungry, never full, eat something at every scheduled mealtime. The whole idea is never hungry. Obviously, when you're hungry, you go into survival mode. So if you're in survival mode, your metabolism slows down. You start storing fat. You start storing calories. You're slowing down your recovery. If you're full, you bog down your system and you actually slow down your recovery because your body is using so much energy to process all that extra food. I think I actually saw a study that Lane Norton posted just on that exact subject, which was kind of nice to see because it reinforced what I've been teaching my guys. So never hungry, never full, and then eat something at every scheduled mealtime. So here you are, not putting your body in survival mode, and then you're not overwhelming your body with too much food, and then you're teaching your body that it's going to be fed at 2 or 3 hour intervals so that it knows it doesn't need to hold on to extra calories in the way of body fat. It doesn't have to keep the metabolism cranked down. We can crank it up and get it burning hot so that, let's compare that metabolism to like a campfire. You start out with a little campfire, and we're trying to get it into a roaring bonfire. You feed it little sticks, and often, if you put too big a stick on there, you snuff it out. You don't give it enough sticks, it also dies out. You give it the right size stick at the regular intervals, it starts to build up. When it gets hotter, you increase the size of those sticks. That means we increase the size of your portions throughout the day. And then when it's a roaring bonfire, we've got your metabolism burning hot. We can throw a wet log on a bonfire and it doesn't phase it. That wet log is a cheat meal. So now we've got you burning hot. We actually turn those cheat meals into fuel. But if you throw too many wet logs on the fire, you're going to snuff it out and you got to rebuild the whole thing. So same goes. Too many cheat meals means you snuff that metabolism out. Now you got to rebuild it. So I teach the guys how to build that campfire into a bonfire, how to use cheat meals appropriately, and then keep that fire burning so that they're building muscle, they're burning body fat, and they're feeling good throughout the day. They got energy. They're 4 o'clock when you usually get tired in the afternoon. They're just cruising right through it, feeling good. If they ever get hungry, then the whole diet program is designed to react to that hunger in a way that you no longer are hungry. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, anyway, it works really well too. I've got guys that drop body fat, depending on how we go with this diet. They're never hungry while they're trying to drop body fat, and they're never overly stuffed while they're trying to get bigger and stronger. So I think, honestly, it's one of the best ways that you can do dieting for an athlete, a strength athlete. Now, a few weeks down the road, once we've got your body used to burning fat for fuel, we throw carbs in. And at that point, you're so insulin sensitive that those carbs are like rocket fuel. And it's really kind of fun to work out with carbs after 2 months of not having them. So yeah, I've seen a lot of good results using that method.
How is somebody that they're flipping through Instagram or whatever, they see strongman and they want to get started in strongman? How do they get started? Where would they start? It's different today than it was when you started. Yeah. Right. So when you started, how do you find a group to train with? So
now I think starting Strongman has a page that, or at least used to have a page that was dedicated to training groups in different areas, strongman gyms. I think the other way is just to find your local strongman gym, or a gym, see if they have strongman equipment. If they have strongman equipment, they'll have a training group. Once you get in with that training group, it kind of takes care of itself from there, because they're going to know where to compete. They're going to know the competitions that are coming up, and they're probably, once you go to those competitions, you'll start finding other groups, in your area that you may want to go train with, or, maybe travel to train with every now and then, like we used to in the old days.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of similar to powerlifting, where the advice I've always had with that is just get your ass in a meet, because you're going to find other people that do meets.
Exactly.
And then without that, you're kind of blind. You can find a gym. It's easier now, but you're still going to not know what time people train in that gym if they do strongman. And to be quite honest, if they even want you in the group or not, so there, there's point. But it's all navigated. It all can be navigated, and in some ways it's a hard question for me to answer as well, because I haven't had to do this. I mean, when I came up through powerlifting, I was fortunate enough to have a group. But then in the times that I didn't, it was like, okay, I got to find the gym that they train at, then start training at the same gym, and then figure out when they train and train at the same time they train.
And hopefully kind of carry over.
Yeah, make sure they see that I'm busting my ass.
Yeah.
And that it can, and spot that. You had to earn your way. It's way easier now.
Yeah.
And for you guys, you had to find the storage container. If you had to figure out, because there were no gyms that had your shit.
Well, no, I had to, that little town in Denison that I did my first contest, the promoter's grandfather is the guy who made all of my equipment. So I had to drive to Denison 6 hours each way to pick up my equipment, Atlas stones, Conan's wheel, farmer's handles. But that was how it was back then. It was dedication. You either drove 6 hours one way, or you didn't have the equipment to train with.
Well, it commits you too.
That's exactly it.
Because now you got the shit, you got the investment in it. You're like,
yeah. Well, and, that brings up a point I was talking about with a friend of mine earlier. Commitment. So nowadays it's almost too easy to find strongman equipment, because there's so many gyms that carry it. So you get people who kind of halfway are committed because it's easy for them to do at the gym that they're already going to anyway. They may have been powerlifting, and now they're like, well, I just want to try strongman. It's here. I'll give it a shot. Back when I started, we had that storage unit, and it was like Tetris trying to get everything out. And, if you didn't want to be there, you wouldn't make it through one workout. The guys who trained there were the diehard guys that would do anything to train strongman. So it kind of weeded out the half-ass guys, and it left the hardcore group that was 100% dedicated to it. The first group that I had was like 5 or 6 guys. Out of that group, see, 1, 2, 3, 3 of us, 3 of us went to World's Strongest Man. 2 of us were alternates for World's Strongest Man. There was a top amateur, and then there was my father, who was the best over 60 masters competitor in the country. I mean, that was a freaking savage group to train with.
Yeah.
But it was because anybody else, and we had a lot of people come and go over the years, but nobody stayed because it was hard as shit to train there. It was just the guys who really, really freaking wanted it that stuck it out and came week in, week out. And I think nowadays, like what I was saying a second ago, it's just so easy for people to go, well, I think I'll try this and maybe it'll be fun. Like, that's great. I think it's great. I think it's awesome that so many people get the opportunity. But when it comes to having a savage training group, it's harder to find because people are so spread out now. You have one guy over here, you have one guy over there, one guy at this gym, where all 3 of those guys would have ended up at the same place because it was the only place to train.
Yeah. And I think if you do find those groups, they don't want to be found. Because the reason that they formed it, because with the popularity of strongman, the popularity of powerlifting, there's way more people coming in, which is great. It's a good thing. So instead of 100 people coming in per year, there's 100,000.
Yeah.
But you still only have 25 that are going to be what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Right. So the savage people, for lack of a better word, they don't want to vet out fucking 800 people a year. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
They still have to do their work because they're serious about their work. Their work is their job. And, you know, they'll bring people in to test, you know, and then if they cut it, they stay. If they don't, but they don't want to deal with a flood of, hey, I'm thinking about it. Can you show me?
Exactly. Well, we had the perfect test at the unit.
Yeah.
It was at a storage unit, and it was about, I think it was like 1,200 feet to go all the way around it.
Mm-hmm.
And so anybody who came and trained with us, we'd do a whole day of training, 4 or 5 events out in that Texas heat. And then you had to do what we call the unithon before leaving. The unithon means you put the harness on, you strap my dad's Suburban to your back, and then you walk around the unit with it. And it didn't matter how long it took you to do it. You just had to finish. Because if you finished, it meant you had heart, because it sucks. Whether you're good or not, it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't finish, you weren't welcome back. Most people did finish. Some guys would take 15 or 20 minutes to do it. Most people finished, but a lot of those guys would never come back on their own.
Yeah.
Once they've gone through that and they've gone over to the ditch and they've thrown their guts up, they realize this is not quite what they had in mind, and they never show back up. So it would weed out the weak pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. Can't really do that at a commercial gym, though.
Now, where was this place in relationship to like people driving by seeing?
Oh man. So the first year that we were there, it was a big wooded lot next door.
Mm-hmm.
And then they shred every fucking one of those trees and built a steakhouse next door.
Two things I'm thinking right now is the steakhouse has people, but you lost your shade.
We lost all of our shade. All of it. All of it. And they put a black top.
Oh, shit.
It was miserable. So I had no hesitation, and I didn't feel bad whatsoever when I would roll over to that ditch and start throwing up in front of people trying to enjoy their expensive steak dinner.
Oh, my God. That's funny right now. Did they have a patio there?
No, not on that side at least. No, but they had a whole line of windows and people just seeing right out at.
Oh, that's great.
Big sweaty guys, no shirt on, throwing up in the ditch.
It's a weird ass question, but what's your best vomit story?
Oh man,
because there's a lot.
There's so many. There's I can think of a few. Now, I had a few conversations with God out there after doing some sick ass medley, and it would be 110 degrees and 90% humidity. And I remember I'd finish, like the sled drag was always the last part of every medley we did, just because it was fucking mean to do it. And so you finish, you cross the line, and then I just gasping for air, kind of make my way from the runway, we called it, which was just a flat bit of concrete, over to the ditch, which had a little bit of grass. And I remember not quite making it, and I kind of collapsed to the ground, and I'm sitting there laying on this scorching concrete with no shirt on, desperately trying to roll over to the grass. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, like, God, please, God, don't let me die like this. Not today, God, not like this. And then, you start heaving up in the ditch and you start feeling better. But I think the best actual puke story was a guy named Dan Harrison. He came out from California because he wanted to load my 460 Atlas stone. He'd heard about it. My stones were kind of legendary. He flew from Southern California, stayed the night at my parents' house with me, and we trained all day Saturday. He couldn't load the stone, but he wanted to give it another shot on Sunday. Now, Saturday, we did a big training day, and he got away with not doing the unithon. So we're like, you're going to come out on Sunday, you're going to try this stone again, and you're going to do the unithon. And so Sunday morning, we did the traditional Sunday breakfast. My mom made all this food. And Dan, we took him out to the storage unit. He tried the stone again, couldn't get it. And we're like, well, it's time to strap up. And we put him in the unithon. He makes it all the way around. And I mean, he collapses at the finish line. Everything, you could see his face is going pale. This guy, he's put in some effort. So we unhook him, and he didn't even get out of the harness. He just, from the ground, he flops over, rolls a couple times. And I remember telling him, like, Dan, you can't foul the runway, man. You got to make it to the ditch. He gets about halfway there, and then just everything he ate came up all over the concrete. And my dad's yelling at him. I'm yelling at him. My dad's like, you just puked up my wife's breakfast. You son bitch. Just, oh, my dad, he was great when it came to reaming people. But yeah, that stain lasted, I think, about a year. It's like it burned a black mark into the concrete, man. It was we would always point at it and just kind of laugh at Dan Harrison's mark. I remember taking a picture of it and sending it to him a couple years later. Yeah. That was one of the best puke stories. But God, there were too many to remember, honestly. I remember guys throwing up in the ditch and then going sitting in their cars with the air conditioner full blast, just trying to survive the rest of the day. Mm-hmm.
What's one, when you think back to all the events that you've done competing wise, what's the one that pops up in the top of your head as the one you remember the most?
Oh man, see, I get asked this question a lot. Oh, you got some that were the events that were really fun, and then you got some where the after parties were really fun.
No, I'm talking the specific event.
Oh, like actual
the lift, the event, not the competition. That's too broad.
Yeah,
you know, it could have been a stone that you loaded. It could have been a yoke carry. It
would have been. God, there were several. There were several that I was pretty proud of. I'd say the one that sticks out the most was my second world record in the Atlas Stones. Mm-hmm. It was the IFSA series heavy set. I had already set the light set record. This was the heavy series. It was at the World Championships in 2005, and I don't know if you've seen the rings, the IFSA ring of stones. It's like a little cup almost that you have to load the stone into with 2-inch piping. Mm-hmm. The guy that went before me lost the tip of his finger. He got it caught between the rings and the stone, and it broke the end of his pinky off. I'm getting ready to go out, and I'm out there looking for his finger. I'm going next, and I'm looking for the guys before me's finger on the ground, making sure I don't step on it. You talk about some shit getting in your head before doing an event. But they find his finger. They take him off to the hospital, and I get ready to go. I have to get this shit out of my mind, and I go out and I absolutely blitz through the course, and I set the new world record. And the guy that's going after me, directly after me, is Magnus Samuelsson, who is the king of stones, my own personal hero. I love that guy. King of stones, going right behind me. Can't touch my time. I've got the world record. It's mine. The best in the world is 2 seconds behind me. That one probably stands out more than most. Anyway, that was a big deal for me.
Are there other ones?
Oh yeah. There's oh man. So tying the axle world record. I think going back through like World's Strongest Man appearances, there's some that are good and some that are bad that stand out. 2 in the same competition. When I broke my ankle, there was a little gap between the mats and when we were doing the log press. And I do kind of a squat jerk where I kick my feet out to the side. Anyway, I miss it forward a little, so I'm bringing the log back to my shoulders during the jerk and trying to get my foot underneath me. It gets caught in the mat. And when the log hits, my foot rolls over, and that's how I broke that side of my foot. So that was one of the worst memories that stands out. But then the next day, 2 events that I had to do. We had an 800-pound frame carry was the first one. That one stands out because I remember kind of laughing at myself because I'm limping with an 800-pound frame in my hands. And I still beat Derek Poundstone on that. But then the deadlift, there's a car deadlift. I went head to head against my really good friend, Misha Kuklayev. And I remember not expecting much, but I just started pulling, and the reps kept going. And I basically did 8 reps with 1.5 legs. I got the 9th one close, and I remember trying to push really hard with my left leg, and this searing pain went up my leg, and I dropped it. But I had just done 8 reps with like 785, something like that, with a broken ankle.
Yeah.
I think that one stands out for a lot of other guys too, because not only did I do the reps in agony, excruciating pain, when I put it down, I kind of leaned over and I started cheering my buddy on. That's just one of the things I love about strongman, though. That's how we are. But yeah, those stand out.
Is the camaraderie the same now as when you were in it before?
Close.
Okay.
Close. Yeah, I think it's real hard to beat the group that was, the 2010 era, because we did a lot of competing together throughout the year. And a lot of that was with Champions League. And Champions League is different than other leagues because the organizer, Marcel Mostert, he's really big about the after parties. And the brotherhood is forged in the fires of battle, but it's solidified at the after party when you get to let your guard down and hang with your brothers and get to know each other. So the guys that were competing at that time were really close because we had been together and done a lot of crazy shit all year.
Yeah.
The guys nowadays, they're not as crazy. So they don't have that same kind of bond. There's guys that are still friends, and they're, camaraderie is still better in strongman than it is in any other sport, hands down. But yeah, I think it's just a little bit less than it was during the golden era.
Why do you think so?
Just the fact that they don't spend as much time together afterward. Yeah. And no other reason. There's no, relatively speaking, Thor and Eddie aside, there's very little animosity between athletes. There's, still very much a brotherhood.
Yeah. If there's anybody that's listening to this now that is, fighting the opiate addiction or using pain meds, what advice would you have towards them? That's in strength sports.
I'd say, the very obvious answer is don't do it, but really you got to think about why you're doing it. And if you're having to take opiates because your body's hurting and you're trying to numb that pain, you should be listening to that pain, and you should start figuring out how to fix it before trying to medicate it and push through it anyway. That's a recipe for disaster. And if you're already down that road, it's kind of a tough question, because if you're already down that road, it's easy to say, hey, don't do that. It's a bad idea. Here, look at my story. This is what could happen. I would say just don't rush your recovery process. Time really is on your side. You don't need, 3 months to recover or to fight and push. Your career's not going to end in a few months. You got time to take 6 months and rebuild yourself and become better next year. So that was always the thing for me. I didn't want to get off, because when I tried to quit, I got sick, obviously, and I'd lose all this weight. And I thought, oh my God, I'm getting so far behind. But if I'd have just gotten far behind for 2 months, 2 months down the road from that, I would have been way above where I would have been if I'd have kept going during that entire time. Does that make sense? Yeah,
but the question I would have is, during that time, did you know that the sickness was withdrawal?
Yeah, when I tried to...
Because I'm sure you tried to lower the dose, right? You tried things.
I tried different things.
Yeah.
And I didn't seek any kind of help ever throughout this entire process, getting off of that or meth. I never, ever looked for help.
Yeah.
I would say look for help. Talk to people who have been there. It's because nowadays there are so many people that have reached out to me. It's amazing how many people are struggling.
Yes.
So the big thing is to know that you're not alone. You're not alone. There are so many people out there going through something similar.
Mm-hmm.
You know, obviously everybody's case is a little different, but I think people would be surprised to realize how not alone they are in their struggles.
Would that have made a difference for you?
I think it would have made somewhat of a difference. Yeah, when I was going through the withdrawals thinking this nightmare will never end, if somebody would have been able to say, stick it out just another week, it'll be okay. Because I didn't see a week being the end result. I thought forever was the end result. Like, I'm always going to feel awful. And this will never get better. If I, just some idea that this was normal and it was temporary could have really helped me, I think. And it's my fault for not reaching out, but
But people have reached out to you.
A lot of people have told me, whatever they're going through, certain things that their situation, how my situation has helped them. I think that's why it's so important for me to talk about this. It would be selfish and a bit irresponsible for me not to tell my story. And that's one of the things I thought when I first started coming out with it, because I didn't want to tell anybody this shit. It's embarrassing to admit to everyone that you fucked your life up and that you went through all the things I went through and, made all the stupid decisions that I've made. It's really shitty feeling to know that you did that. And to share that with people is just like admitting how much of a failure you are, how much of a screw up you were. But there's strength in that ownership, so now I've had to face those demons. I've had to face that reality. And I've realized that, like we just talked about, how I'm not alone in that whole endeavor. And the fact that I've come out and I've said all the things that I've said, I've showed other people that there's hope after addiction. This is the other thing that I find is so many people are they're grateful to be alive after their addictions. It's like, that's not the end of the fucking road, man. There's so much more to life. Aspire to greatness. Don't ever stop aspiring to greatness just because you had a rough go. Just because, you screwed your life up doesn't mean you have to settle for some shit job that you're just glad you're alive and doing. Find the good job, find the purpose, find the greatness. Don't ever stop that, no matter where you've been in life. Well,
If sharing your story is, it's easier now because you've done it more times, right?
Yeah.
But at first it was embarrassing. It was hard. It made you feel like a failure and all these other things. You got to stop for a minute and think about, how many people have you helped, not put a gun in their mouth? How many people have you helped to not overdose? How many people have you given their life back? If you stop and really think about that, how does that make you feel compared to, feeling, you see what I'm saying? Like, you can feel like a failure and worthless, but how does it make you feel to know that you're saving people's lives and they're not blowing their heads off?
I mean, it gives me purpose to keep going forward in the direction I'm going. If that says anything, it means because I know that I've helped so many people, it makes me feel like my life is worthy or worthwhile. I'm worthwhile in some degree. It's a great feeling. It's kind of a double-edged sword feeling. It's an awesome feeling to know that I've helped so many people, but it's kind of a shitty feeling to know that I had to go through all that in order to help people. You know what I mean? So, I always have the kind of mixed emotions about it, but I think the emotion that stands out above the rest is gratitude and, just feeling really, really good about what I do. Really, sometimes a little overwhelmed, sometimes a little, I don't know, like, I guess I still have a little bit of that unworthiness, You know what I mean? Where like people look to me for inspiration, and I'm like, who am I? I'm just a fucking guy that lifts weights for a living. But yeah, I mean, when I think about it, I guess I really have been through some crazy shit. And the fact that people can look to my story for inspiration to improve their own story, that is the second greatest feeling in the world.
Yeah. What is the first?
I think, and this is still just in my head, but I think winning World's Strongest Man would be the first. Although, you know, when I say that, it's not so much to win the title. It's more to show all these people that are looking to me to lead the way, or to show what can be possible. Just to show them what truly is possible. You know, if that makes sense. Like, World's Strongest Man used to be the pinnacle. That was the top of the mountain for me. World's Strongest Man is now, it's just a step on the road to something greater. There's so much I could do if I had that title. Or just, and I realize that just the pursuit of it is enabling me to do the same things that I would do if I had the title. I would
What more can you do if you had the title?
I would just have a bigger platform, I think. That's all. Because I'm already doing everything that I can with it.
Yes. So the bigger platform would provide what?
Just a greater reach to more people who could hear, you know, that they're not alone, that maybe I could inspire a little hope and positivity. That's about it.
What if it was just one person, though? Because you're just one person, right? You know, so granted, you took this on your own path. You know what I'm saying? You fought the battle demons pretty much on your own, right?
Yeah.
Faith, God, you know, intervention aside, you know, on your own, and completely transformed your entire life, right? You very well could not be sitting here right now telling this story on the World's Strongest Man or all these other places, right? And that's stories being told to thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people. You're just one person, right? So if you just help that one other person could help thousands, if not millions, because you don't know who that other person is.
Actually, you know, I never thought about that. That's a good point. That's a really good point. Yeah, you never know who you're helping. That's something else I realized by the people who've reached out to me. You know, I've got people that message me from meeting me back in like 2009, 2008. They're like, hey, you gave me this little piece of advice, and it changed the course of my, you know, life to a degree. And I don't even remember the conversation, but thank God that I gave them the right piece of advice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Actually, one interesting story is 2011. This was kind of cool. You know who Ken Nowicki is from Cerberus? Cerberus Strength.
Yeah.
He was just a helper at World's Strongest Man, and I remember him as this annoying kid on the message boards, asking too many damn questions all the time. And I met him at 2011 World's Strongest Man, and you know, we were doing kind of a small after party for the qualifiers, the guy who didn't make it to the finals. So we were all drinking late at night, and apparently I gave him some good piece of advice, and I mean, I was so drunk I don't remember the conversation. But I gave him a good piece of life advice, and then you know, here I go disappearing for a few years, and then when I kind of pop back out from under my rock, and I start putting some training videos up, and I do a couple contests, and I don't even think I had done a contest yet. I just put a few training videos out. Well, the first person to reach out to me was Ken Nowicki, and he's like, hey man, glad to see you're back. I own a small equipment company. You mind if I send you some stuff? And it turns out he owns Cerberus USA, and he starts sending me the sleeves and like all this gear for free. I'm like, thank God I gave that guy some advice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really came back to me on that one.
Yes. If your son sees this, what would you want him to know?
Oh man. So I think I told you that my son reached out to me actually, just 1 week before I went to England, and it's a so close yet so far kind of situation, because he reached out on Facebook Messenger, and for some reason I was not able to reply to the message. I don't know if it's because my account is blocked from his, or he's only 12, so I don't know how that works. Maybe it's an underage thing, and which is cool that, I can't message some 12-year-old. I kind of like that, thinking about the safety of my son. But yeah, I get this message and I can't reply to it. So I would love, if he saw this, I want him to know that I got that message, and I'm doing everything I can to reply. I've got, my girlfriend and my dad all sending friend requests, and we're trying to get a hold of him, man, because I haven't talked to him in 5 years. I had his mother's, my ex-wife's parents' address where she first moved to in England, and I would send letters and gifts and stuff like that to him at that address. Well, as I mentioned earlier, she gradually stopped answering my phone calls, phased those out. And so I wasn't able to talk to him on the phone. And eventually the packages that I sent started coming back, return to sender. So I knew that her parents' house was for sale, and I'm guessing they moved. And they never gave me an address. I don't have her phone number. At least I don't think I have her phone number. She doesn't answer. So I haven't been able to contact him, and I want him to know that I am desperate to talk to him. I would love to be in contact with my son. I've never wanted anything more than a son my whole life. It's actually kind of a funny story. When I was in that darkness, that hell, I was doing a garage sale, trying to sell a bunch of shit off. I found this box of baseball mitts. And in that box, I had a lefty mitt, a right-handed glove. And I remember why I had that mitt. Because I thought to myself, maybe my son will be left-handed. I want to teach him how to throw and catch. I'm going to keep this glove for him. And then I thought about when I got that glove. I got that glove when I was 9 years old. So what kind of 9-year-old thinks about how he's going to teach his son to throw? That was just my thing. My whole life, I wanted to teach my son all the lessons that I had learned in a better way than I learned them. And I was just robbed of that opportunity, I feel. But anyway, back to, what I'd want to tell him. I want him to know his dad loves him. I want him to know that I'm looking for him, and I can't wait to talk to him.
How could he reach you?
Oh, man, I'm easy to find. Facebook, Instagram, just my first and last name. TikTok, my first and last name. Hell, I think those are probably the easiest ways, without putting my personal phone number out.
Oh, yeah, I get that, yeah. And if he doesn't, what do you want him to know?
I want him to know that his dad has always loved him. Always. I think about him every single day. Literally, there's not a day that goes by I don't think about him in some way, shape, or form. Wondering how he's doing. Still coming up with those lessons that I would teach him. And hopefully, maybe he knows my story. Maybe he's heard some of my story, and he walks a different path than me. I can't keep somebody from going down that road, but hopefully my story keeps people from going that direction. And if it doesn't, hopefully it shows them what can be done to get out of that hell. And, my son, it's so hard. It's so hard to think about everything that he's going through. Because I remember what I had to go through at 12 and all the influence. 12 wasn't so bad. 13, 14 is when I started getting negative influences in my life. And I just want to be there to talk to him and let him know, like, you know, I obviously know I can't live your life, but here's what could happen if you listen to this guy and go down this road. You know, that not having any say in that kind of thing is awful. Not having the ability to let him, like, to give him any kind of info into real world shit and be able to guide him through that, or at least be there when he falls. I can help pick him up. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's, I'd probably talk his ear off.
Well, with that note, I think we've been talking for 3.5 hours or something like that. So we're going to shut this down. I guess my new way of ending the podcast is just saying we're done, and then we're done.
We're done. It's awesome.